Chapter 24-26. Gong Jia smiled and rubbed her head affectionately. When he looked up at Muyaja, his face turned cold as he warned him expressionlessly, "If you dare to bully her when I'm not around, I'll teach you a lesson." Muyaja snorted and ignored him. The two of them were still in an abyss of suffering even when they parted. Gong Jia then said to Yun Shusher, "If brother-in-law bullies you, tell me. I'll come back immediately." He gave her a business card with his satellite phone number on it. Yun Shusher kept the card and smiled. "Your brother-in-law won't bully me. You, on the other hand, must take care of yourself." You said that his job was dangerous. She had no other concerns except for him to protect himself. Gong Jia promised, "I will." With that, he let go of her and turned to board the plane without looking back. The cabin door slowly closed. Yun Shusher and Muyaja returned to the hospital. Yun Yeching had been transferred to the Gong family's medical base. As they were in a hurry, they did not have time to tidy up the ward and pay for the remaining expenses. However, when she returned to the ward to pack her clothes, she discovered that Yun Yeho and Xiang Yu had arrived at the hospital at some point and were waiting for her in the ward. They were originally here to visit her, but the nurse told them that Yun Yeching had been transferred away. They were at a loss. Hence, when Yun Shusher returned to the hospital, Yun Yeho anxiously went up to her and asked, "Where's your father?" "Uncle, why are you here?" "I'm here to see if he's feeling better." Yun Shusher replied, "He's still the same, but he's been transferred to another medical base for treatment." Yun Yeho was at a loss. "This burn hospital is the best in the capital for treating burns. Where did you transfer your father to?" "I just sent him on a plane. I'm planning to send him to a medical base overseas to see if there's a miracle." Yun Shusher only told him this much and did not say much else. Yun Yeho did not pursue the matter further and only expressed his concern before ordering his wife to tidy up the ward. Actually, there wasn't much to pack. Other than a few things, the rest was the script that she had read during the night watch. After packing up their things, Yun Shusher and Muyaja were about to leave. When they passed by a ward, the door suddenly opened. A middle-aged woman suddenly rushed out of the ward, heartbroken. As she walked out of the ward, she covered her face. Tears flowed non-stop as she let out a sorrowful cry. Startled, Yun Shusher dodged and looked through the window of the ward, only to see that it was Lu Jingtian's ward. Ah, how could I forget? Lu Jingtian also lived on this floor. This floor was full of intensive care units. They were all patients with severe burns and needed to be observed. Another middle-aged man walked out of the ward. He looked a little upset. His face was red, and his eyes were red and swollen. There were thick bags under his eyes. It was obvious that he had not rested well. "Don't cry so easily in front of the child." If the child saw this, he would feel even more despair. "Do you still expect Tian to get better?" "Get better?" The middle-aged woman cried and retorted, "How else can she get better? She's injured to this extent. Who the hell is it? Who the hell is so cruel?" It was obvious that this woman was well educated, but when she mentioned the culprit, she was so agitated that she even used vulgar words like ***. Chapter 24-27. Who knows? The man grumbled in annoyance. At the mention of the murderer, he gritted his teeth as well. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with murderous intent. "If we find this kind of anti-society criminal, we should drag him out and shoot him. He'll definitely be a scourge if we keep him alive." The woman cried. Tian woke up last night. She couldn't speak, but her eyes were empty as if there was no life in them. She should know that her looks are all ruined. She loves to dress up and look beautiful. If she sees herself in this state in the future, she won't be able to live on. What should we do then? The man was also worried for a moment. He subconsciously took out his cigarette box and wanted to light a cigarette, but when he remembered that they were in the hospital, he stuffed the cigarette back into the box. The woman continued to cry bitterly. The doctor said that it's a miracle for her to be able to speak. My heart almost died when I heard that. It's a miracle for her to be able to speak. How painful will she be for the rest of her life then? The man replied gloomily, the police came 3 times yesterday to ask the doctor if she could speak. After all, the police suspect that this is a murder case, but there's no one else at the scene except her. They didn't collect any useful evidence at the scene, not even a fingerprint. The CCTV couldn't get a clear picture either. If she can't speak, this case can only be put on hold for the time being. The woman gritted her teeth in hatred when she heard that. Who exactly is it? Yun Shishir walked over and looked into the ward through the window. She saw a person lying quietly on the bed. If not for the slight rise and fall of her chest, she would not even be able to tell that it was a human figure. This was the first time she saw the tragic state of Lu Jingtian after she was injured. Her entire body was charred black, and there was no unscathed skin. Her facial features were indistinguishable as she was smeared with white ointment. She could only vaguely see a pair of empty eyes staring fixedly at the ceiling. Her eyelids were also burned and could not be closed, just like Yun Yeching's. However, in comparison, the surface area of his injuries was slightly better than hers. Lu Jingtian's life was probably ruined after suffering such a calamity. Yun Shishir looked at her. She did not sympathize with her, but she felt uncomfortable. With such injuries, if she did not have the support of her family, she would not have the will to live. Mu Yaja walked over and attracted attention. Mr. Lu Jingtian's father looked up and was stunned when he saw him. Chairman Mu, he was a senior executive of Huanyu, so he was naturally no stranger to him. Mu Yaja looked at his father. Papa Lu immediately replied in trepidation, the situation isn't very optimistic. The doctor said that the burn area is very large. Even though we managed to save her life, she's still under observation. We'll have to observe her in the future. When Mama Lu saw him, she cautiously whispered into his ear, this is calm. Mrs. Lu was shocked. She immediately squeezed out a smile. Chairman Mu. Mu Yaja paused for a moment before asking, is there any progress in the case? At the mention of this, the 2 men's faces darkened as they shook their heads. No. Chapter 24-28. Lu Bushing sighed in disappointment. I don't know if the murderer will be brought to justice in the end. His methods are too cruel. A girl as beautiful as a flower and as exquisite as jade had been ruined to such an extent. I wish I could kill the murderer with my own hands. But the case hasn't made any progress. The doctor said that he doesn't know if there's any hope for her to talk. We can only pray that Tian can talk. At least, she can provide the police with some useful clues. Didn't they collect any valid evidence at the scene? Yun Shishir suddenly asked anxiously. Lu Bushing shook his head, also at a loss. Mama Lu sighed and said, if we had even the slightest clue, we wouldn't be so worried. It's been a long time since the incident happened. All the pressure that should be exerted has been exerted, and the police chief has been contacted. What's next? The chief is also very surprised. Yun Shishir frowned thoughtfully. Logically speaking, with such advanced investigative methods, it's impossible that they can't find any clues by now. The police said that they've checked all the surveillance cameras in that area, and they didn't find any suspicious people at that stage. How can that be? There were surveillance cameras everywhere on the streets, like countless eyes in the sky. How could they not find any suspicious footage? Just as Yun Shishir said suspiciously, Lu Bushing continued, the police suspect that the moment she left the bar, she got into the car directly, and then they couldn't capture her. However, the police investigated the bar entrance for 2 days and didn't find any witnesses. They said that they saw her enter and leave the bar wearing black clothes. Yun Shishir suddenly thought of an extremely important question. She looked up and suddenly asked, "What about fingerprints?" Fingerprints. As soon as Lu Bushing heard this, his face strangely turned green, and a lingering fear appeared in his heart. Mu Yaja also noticed his strange expression and said casually, "What do you know? Tell us." Lu Bushing said hesitantly, "When you mentioned fingerprints, it reminded me of what the police said earlier. Actually, to tell you the truth, we also asked this question at the beginning. But the police told us at the beginning that they couldn't collect any fingerprints at the scene. When I heard that, I also found it unbelievable. Couldn't collect any fingerprints. How could this be?" She had some understanding of criminal investigation, which was why she liked to read before. She had read a lot of detective novels and even autobiographies of forensic workers. They all said with certainty, if it exists, it will leave traces. Traces could speak, they couldn't lie. It was the most irrefutable evidence. As long as a person had been at the scene of the crime, they would definitely be able to find even the slightest trace at the scene. But he actually said that he didn't collect any questions. This was somewhat inconceivable. Yun Shishir asked unwillingly, "Where are the footprints?" Mu Yaja glanced at her and found that she was very keen on getting to the bottom of this matter. Could it be that she was also suspecting that Lu Jingtian's case was somehow related to Yun Yeqing? The two cases didn't seem to be related at all, and the methods used were different, but the details were the same. Chapter 24-29. Yun Shishir refuted this statement. "As long as we investigate further, we should be able to find some clues, right? Other than Lu Jingtian and the criminal, there shouldn't be anyone else on the second floor." Lu Bushing and Yun Shishir looked at each other, hesitating to speak. Mu Yaja said, "The second floor of the bar isn't always empty. It's just that there are fewer people at that time." Lu Bushing nodded in agreement. "It's just that there are fewer people at that time." By the time Tian Tian reached the bar, the midnight show had already started, and the customers were already on the dance floor. Before this, the bar was filled with folk singers, but at this time, there was no one on the dance floor. Other than a few customers who took the initiative to occupy seats, the rest went upstairs. There were many customers upstairs who were drinking and listening to songs. However, the waitress went upstairs once. She served a cup of herbal tea to that person, and she saw that person, who was dressed in black, pick up the cup and drink it directly. Yun Shishir furrowed her brows and walked to the side. After mulling it over, she turned around and said firmly, "If that's the case, logically speaking, her fingerprints should be left on the cup. Glass is a very good fingerprint detector, so there should be more than one fingerprint left on the cup." Lu Bushing was a little desperate. He closed his eyes and muttered, "It's precisely because they didn't find it that I find it inconceivable. Has it been wiped off?" Yun Shishir said, "I've seen one before, but I don't know if it's true or not. I heard that hydrochloric acid can wipe off fingerprints." Lu Bushing's mother was shocked when she heard this. However, she heard Lu Bushing say, "The police only said that as long as she touched the cup, even if she wiped it with hydrochloric acid, through technical means, even if it's incomplete fingerprints, it can be considered a basic clue. Criminal investigation technology is very advanced now. Unlike in the past, there are very few pending cases that are put on hold, and they are basically solved in a few days. Even if the murderer can escape from the lie detector machine, she can't escape the evidence left behind at the scene. Moreover, if she wiped the cup with hydrochloric acid, it proves that the cup has been wiped. However, the police technicians extracted many fingerprints from the surface of the cup, but only her fingerprints." Yun Shishir was stunned. Only hers was not extracted. "Yes." Yun Shishir said in surprise, "How is that possible? Didn't that waiter see her drink it with his own eyes? If that's the case, even if we can't find fingerprints, we should be able to find residual saliva, right?" That's basically impossible. Even the provincial forensic identification agencies did not have this kind of ability. DNA testing requires a certain amount of DNA. If it's too little, it won't be able to do it. Yun Shishir was stunned. This is unbelievable. Mu Yaja suddenly thought of something. There's only one possibility if we can't get fingerprints. Yun Shishir's eyes widened. What do you mean? Destroy the fingerprints. Destroy fingerprints. Yun Shishir suddenly smiled and said, if it's cut with a knife, the fingerprints won't be completely destroyed. Mu Yaja suddenly interrupted her and said casually, it would be different if the pulp of the finger was cut off. Yun Shishir was dumbfounded. Cut? Do you mean cut with a knife? Cut off a piece of flesh from the finger while it was still alive. Chapter 24:30. Mu Yaja rubbed his chin. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, oh, of course, if something like an iron was used to burn the fingerprints, it could also completely destroy the fingerprints. Of course, she would have to suffer a certain amount. Lu Buxiong and Mrs. Lu looked at each other and gasped. Would anyone be so cruel to themselves? Yun Shishir also said in disbelief, what kind of pain would she have to endure? It would be difficult to burn all 10 of her fingers with just an iron, right? Unless it was a pair of fire tongs. Would anyone be so scary? How could she be so cruel to herself? If that's the case, as long as we tell the police will keep a close eye on this clue. It shouldn't be difficult to find someone with scalded hands, right? As long as a warrant is issued, as long as the culprit is still in human society, she will definitely be brought to justice. Unless she doesn't have to go out and doesn't see the light of day all day. In the basement of the villa estate, Yun Na sat upright on the sofa and quietly read a book. Ever since that incident, her personality had become much quieter. Using the word quiet to describe her was unrealistic. Dead silence. She was like a walking corpse. There was no longer a trace of life that a person should have. There was only a lifeless silence. She didn't like to talk or smile. She continued to live for the sake of revenge. That was the value of her existence now. That woman asked her if she was afraid. How could she be afraid? Since she had already died once and even gone through hell, there was nothing scarier in this world than experiencing death. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. She quietly put the book aside, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. There was a familiar person standing outside the door, holding something in his hand. She opened the door, and the man immediately handed the things on the tray to her. This is what Missy ordered me to bring to you. Other than some necessities, there were some food, drinks, and toiletries on the tray. She took all of them and closed the door. She didn't go out and usually lived alone in the basement. She would send people to deliver the things she needed. The only good thing about the basement was that it actually had a fireplace. She walked to the fireplace and threw a bag of rubbish into it. She fiddled with it and silently watched it burn in the fire. She was dressed in black, which was what she wore at the bar. At this moment, it had already turned into ashes in the fire. She returned to the sofa and sat down. She quietly unwrapped the bread and ate it bit by bit as she read quietly. The fingers that were holding the book were a shocking sight. It was obvious that it had been burned off by something hot. Sulfuric acid. Fire tongs. An iron. None of them. She had used a windproof flintlock to burn it. The feeling of pain was self-evident. Yun Na suddenly closed her book and slowly raised her eyes. Her eyes were very big and very black. Looking at it now, they seemed extremely empty, like the deep and terrifying eye sockets of a skeleton. It made one shudder with a single glance. In the hospital, Yun Shishir asked suspiciously, how did the murderer know that Lu Jingtian would appear at the crime scene at the perfect time? Chapter 24:31. Auntie Lu explained, the police initially suspected that the murderer was someone she knew, so they focused on the two best friends who met Jing Tian at the bar for a drink. However, after repeated comparisons with the surveillance footage, they realized that Lu Jingtian and the murderer weren't close. In fact, they were strangers. If the murderer was a stranger, it would be a little tricky. Yun Shishir questioned, still, if the murderer was a stranger, why did he choose Jingtian? Auntie Lu was shocked. Could it be an antisocial personality disorder? How can there be so many antisocial personality disorders? Yun Shishir said, their existence is reasonable. I believe that this is a murder case and not a simple accident or assault. Or maybe the murderer didn't want to kill her on purpose, but wanted to inflict pain on her. Upon hearing Yun Shishir's analysis, Auntie Lu sucked in a breath of cold air. She covered her mouth and widened her eyes in horror as she shook her head in disbelief. How can there be such a cruel person in this world? How can he do such a heinous thing without batting an eyelid? Yun Shishir furrowed her brows but did not say anything else. Now that things had progressed to this point, she already had a vague suspect in mind. It was Yun Na. If the murderer was determined to inflict pain on Lu Jingtian, then there must be a deep and insurmountable grudge between the two. Lu Jingtian and Yun Yicheng got into trouble one after another, so they could not help but suspect her. The reason why they suspected her was because the series of events were too coincidental. The police did not suspect Yun Na because, first, she was listed as a missing person. Second, they did not know the reason behind it. If they knew that Yun Na and Lu Jingtian had such a grudge, they would definitely suspect her, too. Yun Shishir was silent for a long time before she suddenly asked, "Can I go in and see her?" Auntie Lu bit her lower lip and nodded. Of course. She just woke up, though, and her emotions are still unstable. Don't disturb her. She's especially easily frightened now. I'm worried that she'll lose control of her emotions. Yun Shishir pushed open the door to the ward and slowly walked in. Lu Jingtian was lying quietly on the bed. She was unable to close her eyes and was forced to keep them open, which made her look particularly hideous. Her entire body was covered in burns. Even Yun Shishir couldn't bear to take a closer look. Life is very fragile. Man's only weapon was his superior intellect. However, the skin on his body was incomparably fragile. Yun Shishir looked at her quietly for a long time without saying anything. Lu Jingtian had many conflicts with her, too. Previously, the police had also called her for a routine interrogation. After she provided an alibi, she was probably completely removed from the list of suspects, so they didn't call again. Given her personality, she must have offended quite a number of people. However, she did not feel much sympathy. At most, she could only say that she felt pity. All evil had a source. Unless there was an unexpected disaster, all hatred had a source and could be traced. If Lu Jingtian had not been so ruthless to Yun Na back then, not even hesitating to use an eyebrow shaver to disfigure her face, Yun Na would not hate her to the core. Chapter 2432. Yun Na's face was disfigured by her. Back then, in the corridor, it was Lu Jingtian who used an eyebrow shaver to cut her face, one by one, and forcibly disfigured her. As for the cycle of reincarnation, she merely sowed an evil seed and received an evil retribution. However, the price she had to pay was too heavy. Then, when will it be my turn next? Yun Na must hate me, right? She'll come looking for me sooner or later. That was what Yun Shishir thought in her heart. After alighting from the plane, Gong Jia escorted Yun Yicheng to the headquarters of the Hurricane Group's medical base. The medical base had a group of the world's top medical technology teachers. Rather than saying that they were the top, it was more accurate to say that they were the top to the extreme, becoming a terrifying force. The Gong family's medical base was a place that many scientists dreamed of. After alighting from the plane, Gong Jia contacted them. When he arrived at the base, a group of doctors in white coats stood at the entrance to welcome his arrival. These doctors had different skin colors and ages, and there was no lack of young women among them. Most of them were technicians from different countries and fields. Many of them were hired by Gong Xiaoying at a huge cost. Upon seeing Gong Jia, a young woman took the lead to welcome him with a smile. "Welcome back." She had fair skin and beautiful facial features. She looked like a mixed blood of Chinese and European descent. Her beautiful appearance made her look especially young. When Gong Jia saw her, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. "Alice, long time no see." He had a close relationship with Alice. When they were free and both were at the headquarters, they would ask each other out for a drink. In fact, he was not good at interacting with women. He was close to Alice because she had a more masculine personality and did not have the coy and pretentious characteristic of women. Secondly, he still remembered the time when he was in Africa and was accidentally injured in the war. A bullet pierced through his arm. As the battlefield was heavily polluted and the conditions were poor, the wound quickly became infected and deteriorated. The team doctor accompanying him shook his head and sighed, saying that his arm could not be saved. When they contacted the headquarters, Alice heard the news and immediately said that no matter what, they had to send the patient back to the headquarters first. They could not operate on him without permission. After he was sent back, Alice healed his arm effortlessly. Furthermore, she used genetic regeneration technology to heal his arm. Even now, there wasn't a single scar on his arm. Gong Jia saw this operation as a life-saving operation. Alice saw it as a game. She thought that Gong Jia's surgery was a little spice for her boring working life. It was a little challenging. She casually described the operation as a game to adjust her work life. In short, she was a very scary woman. It was said that with the technology she mastered, she could directly clone an ancient creature. Ancient creatures, clone regeneration, this was a matter of science fiction. This was an advanced technology that scientists all over the world could only dream of. If it weren't for the fact that Alice didn't know what would happen after cloning, she might have tried to study it. He couldn't help but think of a movie, The Opposite Sex. What a terrifying woman. Gong Jia once again came to a conclusion. Gong Jia had always joked about whether she could use her technology to clone him a few years later. Chapter 24:33. Alice said nonchalantly, "For example, if you suffer a serious injury or if the cancer cells have spread throughout your body, I can separate your head from your body and reattach it to a suitable body." Gong Jia clutched his throat and shuddered when he heard that. Forget it. Alice was the youngest member of this team. She came forward and gently hugged Gong Jia before asking, "Second Master, I heard that you have a patient you want to entrust to me." Gong Jia nodded. Yun Yecheng was sent to the observation room. He was still in a semi-conscious state after being injected with a tranquilizer on the plane. Alice walked around him. Suddenly, she lifted the white bedsheet covering him and lifted his clothes to check his injuries. She then put on a pair of sterile gloves, reached out, and unbuttoned his clothes. She then looked at his injuries seriously. "Oh. It's concentrated sulfuric acid." "Yes. His upper body is badly burned." Gong Jia explained, because he was splashed with concentrated sulfuric acid, it can be said that his entire body is covered in bruises. Alice said lightly, "At least his face is completely ruined. Is there any hope?" Gong Jia was a little nervous. Alice glanced at him and suddenly shrugged. She asked innocently, "Isn't he still alive?" "The doctor said that he's not completely out of danger yet." Alice smiled elegantly and said nonchalantly, "If you're asking if he can still live, then I'll answer you. As long as you send him to me and he's still breathing, I can save his life." Gong Jia continued, "His vocal cords and many functional organs have been burned. Can you think of a way? Yes. I can give it a try. Can you restore these functions? Make him speak. That's right. Alice pondered for a moment before saying, if you give me enough time, I can use genetic regeneration to restore his damaged organs. When Gong Jia heard this, he was finally relieved. Alas, he saw Alice sizing up Yun Yeqing with great seriousness. Her eyes shone with unfathomable ambition. Gong Jia immediately knew what she was thinking when he saw the look in her eyes. Was she using him as a test subject? I also want to try a head transplant recently. Alice turned her head and asked, can I use him for my experiments? Gong Jia said firmly, no. Why? Alice felt suspicious. He was undoubtedly a cripple. Most importantly, she was not interested in doing something that she was already tired of doing. Remodeling her organs was really easy, and she was already tired of it. However, she really wanted to try the head transplant surgery. Although it was a little risky. But wasn't this an opportunity? Gong Jia immediately said, he's very important to me. You can't use him as an experiment. Who is he to you? He's Gong Jia didn't know how to explain it. Sister's adoptive father. It was rather too abrupt to mention this to Alice all of a sudden. He said, no matter what, you're not allowed to touch his brain. Cure him, or at least lessen his pain. Can his facial features be restored? I can recover half of it. 50%. Chapter 24:34. 50% is an optimistic result. The Gong Jia said, I'll leave him to you, then. Alice took off her gloves and threw them aside. She turned to look at him calmly and suddenly smiled. Is there any reward? Reward? There should be a reward for leaving such a boring task to me. The Gong Jia said heartlessly, no. Alice's face darkened instantly. You don't have any sincerity in asking for help. I'll bring you Fandy's top-grade dry red wine next time. I'm sick of it. Missy, you're really hard to please. The Gong Jia turned to leave after saying that. Alice immediately chased after him and gave him a look. Since it's rare for you to come back, why don't we have a drink now? No, Alice thought that he was worried about Yun Yeqing, so she quickly said, don't worry, I'll settle him down right away. The Gong Jia shook his head. I want to go home. Alice's face changed. Oh, I forgot. You haven't been back for a long time. Your father must be thinking about you. The Gong Jia walked to the door, turned around, and gestured to her. Let's stop here. I'll go back first. Okay. The Gong family's main residence was located on a private island in Atlantis. Due to the need for privacy, the entire island was blocked by a signal network. The entire island was vast and even bigger than many small countries. The Gongs had already built the island into a country. Security, defense, vacation, entertainment, and so on. Everything was available. When the island was first developed, there were still many indigenous people left, but all of them were extradited to other countries by the Gongs. Other than that, there were ships stationed in the nearby waters day and night. Once they detected any abnormalities, they would activate the entire island's emergency system. Any trespassers would be mercilessly destroyed with missiles. There were also many cargo ships that got lost at sea. If they barged in by mistake, they would be immediately driven away. It could be said that this was the Hurricane Group's headquarters. If one were to overlook the entire island through a helicopter, one would easily see that in the center of the island, there was an extremely majestic and magnificent ancient castle. This ancient castle was from the time of St. Louis. Back then, when the Gong family developed this island, they did not hesitate to spend a huge sum of money to bid for this ancient castle with a long history. Furthermore, they forcefully moved the entire castle to this island and built it. Back then, when Gong Jia learned that the castle he had lived in since childhood had been moved from a place thousands of miles away to this island, he had been shocked for a long time. He had always found it inconceivable and did not know how his father had done it. Returning to the castle, he had just stepped through the door when the butler saw him. As if he had already expected his return, the butler bowed and respectfully said, "Second young master, master is waiting for you in the study." "I understand." Gong Jia went up to the 4th floor. Pushing open the door of the study, he saw a middle-aged man sitting in front of a long desk in the spacious and magnificent study, looking out of the window with his back to him. Judging from his back, this man was quite old, but he still had a graceful bearing. Chapter 24:35. His back was facing him as he held a pipe in his hand. Even when he heard the door open, he did not turn around immediately. Instead, he quietly looked out the window and said in a deep voice, "You're back." His deep voice was like a mellow wine. Gong Jia greeted respectfully, "Father. Did you have a good vacation?" "Yeah. It's a rare vacation, so I rested well for a while." "The vacation is over. It's time to settle down." "Yes." Gong Jia's unruly aura could not help but lessen a little. In front of this man, he maintained a respectful and humble attitude from beginning to end. Gong Xiaoying casually placed his pipe on the windowsill and slowly turned around. The facial features that came into view, despite the traces of time, were still extraordinarily handsome. The contours of his face were as sharp as a knife, and one could vaguely see the youthful spirit of his youth. He was wearing a British-style double-breasted suit. His physique was just right. It was hard to imagine that he was already 46 years old. Thinking back, he must have been a particularly handsome man. Gong Jia's handsome eyebrows and contours were inherited from him. Gong Xiaoying sized him up and asked casually, "Do you have any thoughts about this year's plan?" "Father," Gong Jia paused for a moment, then curled his lips and said arrogantly, "The market that Hurricane Group values the most is the African market. However, in the past 3 years, the results of the African market have not been as perfect as expected. I think it's a pity. The fertile African market will bring immeasurable benefits to Hurricane Group. Why don't you divide the market under my name?" Gong Xiaoying looked at him and narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, he laughed and said, "You're really arrogant. The North American market is already under your name, and now you want to take the African market under your name. You're really ambitious." After saying that, he was silent for a long time. After a pause, he suddenly snorted and said, "However, this is how I was when I was young." Gong Jia smiled. Gong Xiaoying continued, "However, you're too ambitious. If you show off and steal the limelight, aren't you worried that it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to guard against a stab in the dark? What's there to worry about?" Gong Xiaoying sized him up and suddenly shook his head with a smile. "It's not a good thing to be too arrogant at such a young age." Gong Jia stared deeply into Gong Xiaoying's eyes and suddenly smiled deeply. "Father values me because he appreciates my arrogance. I admire your ambition and arrogance. However, I am also worried about you." "Worried?" Gong Jia slowly walked to the table and said, "Father, this is not like you. For me, worry is superfluous, but ambition is essential." Gong Xiaoying suddenly stood up slowly and looked at him. The father and son stood facing each other. Gong Xiaoying's aura did not diminish in the slightest. His figure was tall and straight, and his aura was astonishing and imposing. He looked at Gong Jia for a long time and suddenly said cheerfully, "If you insist on taking the African market, then I'll fulfill your wish. However, you should let go of the North American market." Gong Jia nodded in agreement. Hurricane Group has indeed missed a lot of opportunities in the African market. I only hope that you can at least make up for what Hurricane has lost. Understood. Right. Chapter 24:36. Hurricane Group has indeed missed a lot of opportunities in the African market. I only hope that you can at least make up for what Hurricane Group has missed out on. Understood. Oh yeah, Gong Xiaoying suddenly turned around and looked at him. Squinting, he sized him up and said slowly, I heard that you went to the Maldives for a vacation and then went to country Z. Gong Jie's mind buzzed. His eyelids twitched, and he looked up but pretended to be calm as he looked back at him. Yeah, you seem to be going there a lot recently. Gong Xiaoying paused for a moment but his voice suddenly stopped. He lifted his chin and sized him up. Suddenly, his lips curled into a smile, and he said half seriously and half sarcastically, Why? Are you keeping a woman there? It was not a rhetorical question. His tone was casual, as though he was casually probing. A woman? Other than this possibility, I can't think of why you're always going there. As soon as Gong Xiaoying finished speaking, Gong Jie's eyelids twitched violently. Indeed, during this period of time, he had been going to Z country frequently. Usually, he was fully immersed in his work. Even when he was on vacation, he rarely went to Asia because he was mainly responsible for North American affairs. His core was in North America, so he rarely went to Asia unless there was an emergency. Would he arouse his father's suspicions? He was a little unsure if the surveillance his father had arranged around him had found out that he was with Yun Shishir. He also did not know how much his father knew about his whereabouts in country Z. Thinking of this, Gong Jie raised his eyebrows and replied helplessly, Father, you should know that I've never been interested in women. Yeah, I know that. I don't know why, but this is one of the things you don't seem to understand. When it comes to women, you're especially dull. When the iron tree blooms, bring a woman back for me to see. As Gong Xiaoying spoke, he turned around and lazily sat down at the table. He leaned back slightly and looked up at him with a hint of reproach. If only you were half as glorious as I was when I was young, I wouldn't be so worried about you. Gong Jia frowned blankly. Father, are you going to talk about your romantic past again? I don't want to hear it. Ha! Gong Xiaoying smiled and shook his head. Then, he said in a half-serious, half-commanding tone, I don't mean anything else. Hurry up and bring me a daughter-in-law. That's the most important thing. Another woman. Gong Jia looked a little impatient. He raised his head arrogantly and said arrogantly, None of them caught my eye. How is it possible that there isn't anyone that he likes? A woman's attraction to a man is a primal instinct, unless... Gong Xiaoying narrowed his eyes. Unless my son likes men. Gong Jie's face darkened. He looked at him gloomily. Are you serious? Gong Xiaoying retorted coldly, what else could it be? You hang around with that bunch of men all day. How many women do you see in a day? You keep saying that there isn't anyone that catches your eye, but the point is, the number of women you've seen since you were young can be counted on your fingers. Gong Jie's lips twitched violently. But this was the truth. Chapter 24:37. Other than Alice, he rarely had any deep contact with other women since he was young. It wasn't that he wasn't interested in women, but all his focus was on the company's affairs. Hence, he didn't have the heart to care about matters of the heart. Gong Xiaoying couldn't figure it out. He looked at his son in puzzlement as if he was looking at an iron tree. He stared at Gong Jia and suddenly asked suspiciously, Don't you need women? Gong Jia snorted coldly. I don't need them. Oh, Gong Xiaoying said, dragging out the last syllable. He looked at him again and suddenly asked, Don't you have any physiological needs? Cough. Gong Jia's expression changed awkwardly. He turned his body slightly and his fringe covered his eyes. His deep eyes were slightly embarrassed and glanced away. I'll settle it myself. Gong Xiaoying didn't know whether to laugh or cry at these words. Settle it yourself. Cough. Gong Jia was even more embarrassed. He explained, I don't usually have any special needs. It would have been better if he didn't explain. Once he did, Gong Xiaoying's thoughts went astray. Didn't have any special needs. How was that possible? Didn't he know men well? Could it be that his dull son had sexual apathy? Or was it that a certain part of his body hadn't developed well? That was impossible. When his son was 18 years old, he even took a bath with him. His son's puberty was very vigorous. Gong Xiaoying was so worried that his heart was about to break. He gently rubbed his chin as his conflicted eyes suddenly fell on a certain part of his nephew's body that was hard to put into words. Gong Jia followed his gaze and fell on his lower abdomen. He was stunned and his handsome face darkened. He said expressionlessly, I don't have any other instructions. I still have something to do. With that, he turned and walked out of the door. Gong Xiaoying immediately said, Wait. Gong Jia didn't stop walking. Gong Xiaoying casually threw a string of gold-threaded cedar at him. Stop. Do you hear me? Gong Jia turned around and asked impatiently, Do you have any other orders? Gong Xiaoying suddenly stood up and walked to his side. He sized up Gong Jia, only to see him frowning impatiently. His eyes were closed, but his face was strangely red. This kid's face had turned so red after just a few words. Gong Xiaoying hated him for being so disappointing. TSK. Why is your face so red? He suddenly patted his shoulder sympathetically. When I was your age, I already had a child. You haven't even tasted a woman before. My heart aches for you. Who wants your heartache? Gong Jia thought to himself. However, Gong Xiaoying let out a long sigh and said seriously, Son, work harder and give birth to a grandson for me to play with. Could it be that he thought that a grandson could be conjured out of thin air just because he wanted to? Gong Jia said expressionlessly, If you want a grandson, you have to find a woman who's willing to give birth to one for me. Gong Xiaoying frowned and glanced at him. He said rudely, Women who are willing to give birth to your children can line up from here to Siberia. You're the one who's disappointing. He paused, narrowed his eyes, and suddenly said, I see that you're quite close to Alice. That girl seems to be quite good. Alice? Chapter 24:38. It was probably because he accidentally saw her dissecting a corpse in the research room that he was traumatized by women. When Alice was eating Western food, her posture was very elegant. She cut the steak with her knife and fork, but Gong Jia always felt that her technique was as if she was dissecting a corpse. What a terrifying woman. It was okay to have a drink occasionally, but if they were to date, it would be a nightmare. Oh, Gong Xiaoying replied. Suddenly, he thought of something and said casually, I heard from the report that the bodyguard who was ordered to protect you said that he saw you with a woman and that you were having fun. Gong Jia's heart skipped a beat. He turned his face slightly and glanced at Gong Xiaoying's expression. Seeing that there was no abnormal expression on his face, he felt slightly relieved. He pretended to be calm and asked, What did they say? They said that they saw you on a date with a woman, drinking coffee, going to the market, and that you were very close. Gong Jia frowned. Could it be the last time? After he finished his work, he went to Country Z. When Yun Shishir took him to the market to eat spicy hot pot, they played many games, shooting, throwing rings, fishing. It was that time that he realized that someone was following them. However, he had clearly warned those people not to reveal his whereabouts to his father. He didn't expect that his father would hear about it. How much did they say about his sister and how much did they report to his father? His father's seemingly careless probing, what exactly was he trying to test him for? Gong Jia didn't know how much Gong Xiaoying knew. However, after examining his expression, he didn't probe too much. It was as if he didn't know Yun Shishir's identity. His expression softened and he said, I go to Country Z often, but not for her. She's just a normal friend. Oh. Then what are you doing it for? To find someone. Gong Xiaoying's expression changed slightly and sank, but his tone was calm. It seems that you haven't completely given up. If she's alive, I want to see her. If she's dead, I want to see her corpse. Otherwise, how can I be satisfied? Gong Jia pretended to be calm. At the same time, he was probing. Gong Xiaoying clenched his fists slightly. When Gong Jia saw this, he heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that his father did not know the truth that his sister was still alive for the time being. Although he is somewhat ashamed, he must keep the secret before his sister agrees to return to the Mujiao. This is what he promised. Gong Xiaoying, on the other hand, looked a little forlorn. He knew who his brother was looking for. She was the daughter he had with Mu Qingqing. According to the Gong Jia, her name was Shishir. It was a very nice name. When he first learned that the woman he loved had given birth to a pair of children for him, a pair of twins, he was so happy that he didn't know how to describe it. However, it was a pity that no matter how hard he tried, he still wasn't able to meet him. When he rescued Gong Jia from the hospital clearly told him that the other child had died and his body was nowhere to be found. Gong Xiaoying almost broke down. If Gong Jia hadn't saved him, he really didn't know what crazy things he would have done in a fit of anger. However, after so many years, he had already accepted this cruel fact. However, this son of his couldn't get over it. He had been looking for traces of that child and never gave up a chance. Chapter 24:39. He didn't stop him, nor did he stop him. Perhaps, he was also secretly hoping for a miracle. However, his rationality told him that he shouldn't be obsessed with a fact that had already been settled. Since she's already gone, you should be more open-minded. But what if my sister is still alive? Gong Jia suddenly asked softly, trying to sound him out. Back then, the hospital said that she had already died in a car accident. But what if a miracle happens? Gong Jia stared into his eyes. Gong Xiaoying looked up at him. Looking at his son's stubborn and paranoid expression, his lips suddenly trembled for a while. His facial muscles suddenly trembled slightly. Until now, when he mentioned that child, his eyes would still turn red with emotion. If she's still alive, if such a miracle really happens, I'm willing to exchange everything for it. Even if he had to exchange all his wealth for it. These words weren't just empty words. Mu Qingqing was the woman he loved the most. He was crazy about her. Not being able to see her for the last time became the biggest regret in his life. Therefore, after she died, he would keep any woman who had the slightest resemblance to her by his side, whether it was out of consolation or in search of warmth. After losing her, all the women he loved from then on looked like her. Gong Jia heard this and frowned slightly. Even if it was in exchange for hatred. Gong Jia really wanted to ask this, but it would be too abrupt. He sighed and suddenly said, "Father, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." After that, Gong Jia left the study. When he looked back, he saw Gong Xiaoying slowly walking to the window and holding on to the windowsill. Through this window, he could see a patch of Chinese roses planted in the back garden. His back view, however, looked incomparably lonely. In the basement, the sound of whips and men groaning in pain could be heard. In the detention room, a few men knelt on the ground in a row. Their clothes were tattered and there were obvious traces of being whipped. They were dripping with blood. Gong Jia sat on a chair with his legs crossed elegantly. After 10 lashes, the men looked very disheveled. These were the bodyguards who had followed him back then. "Let's stop," he casually ordered, and his subordinate immediately withdrew his whip. Gong Jia sized them up and suddenly asked, "How much did you tell my father?" Dust danced in the quiet air. A beam of light from the skylight shone on their faces. They all appeared to be in a sorry state as they endured the pain. Gong Jie's voice became even harsher. In your eyes, do my words have no authority? Second young master. Second young master, please calm down. Gong Jia threw the burnt cigarette on the ground expressionlessly. He leaned forward slightly, stared at them, and said word by word, "What did I say? Don't tell my father a single word about that woman. What did you do?" The group remained silent. Gong Jia smiled coldly. Very well. He suddenly stood up and approached them, his tone even colder. Do you remember that I warned you that if you leak any information, I will kill you? Chapter 2440. Second young master. If you want to kill us, do as you please. However, we are extremely loyal to the chief, and we dare not hide anything from him. However, we did not say anything in detail. Because of second young master's special instructions, we didn't report the details of the woman's background even though we already knew the details of her background. Oh. Gong Jia sized him up. What information do you have? That woman should be the eldest daughter of the Gong family who was left behind. Before this, we specially investigated and confirmed her identity. Gong Jia's gaze turned cold. How did you find out? As long as we have the features, it is not difficult to investigate her background. Unlike Gong Jia's previous investigation, there were no clues. Searching all over the world was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. However, once they had confirmed their target, they would investigate their background based on their facial features. Not to mention the Gong family's background, even those with a little bit of connections could be easily found, let alone a famous artist like Yun Shishir. Gong Jia pondered for a moment and said, "What did you say to father?" The chief asked about your whereabouts during this period. We only said that you have been very close to a woman recently, and your relationship seems to be very intimate. The chief thinks that woman is your lover. Achoo! Yun Shishir, who was far away in China, suddenly sneezed. Early in the morning, she rushed to the location of the opening ceremony. Qin Zhou informed her the next night that the opening ceremony would be held early in the morning. Yun Shishir questioned. Didn't she receive the notice that the opening ceremony would be held a few days later? However, Qin Zhou replied that the staff in charge of the opening ceremony made a mistake and picked the wrong time. When they realized the mistake, they informed the staff overnight and changed it to the next day. Because tomorrow is an auspicious day. There won't be any good days after that. The opening ceremony was held in a village by the mountain road. The village still retained the ancient architecture of the Beijing faction, but it was obvious that it had been renovated. The ancient charm of the ancient architecture was retained, and many modern elements were added, giving it a unique style. This village would be the place where the female lead grew up. When Yun Shishir arrived at the scene, she immediately saw Gu Xingzi surrounded by the media. He was wearing sunglasses and was surrounded by the media. With his outstanding height, she could see his cold and handsome face at a glance. Her expression relaxed a little. Last night, she heard that the male lead had been decided. Gu Xingzi would play the male lead, and Hua Jin would join the cast as a supporting actor. After the ban was lifted, Gu Xingzi posted on Weibo to announce that he was going to star in a new drama. Very quickly, the news hit the hot search list. When the fanatical fans saw the news, they were so excited that they teared up. Even though Gu Xingzi had disappeared for a few months, many fans suspected that he had quietly left the entertainment industry. However, with just one Weibo post, he strongly demonstrated his extraordinary popularity. The rallying power of a heavenly king was truly unstoppable. When she heard the news from Qin Zhou last night, Yun Shishir felt sincerely gratified. While Yun Shishir was in a daze, Hua Jin suddenly walked over and touched her shoulder. Shishir, you're here. Ah. She turned her head and saw Hua Jin standing in front of her with a charming smile. Morning. Chapter 2441. Hua Jin yawned and grumbled regretfully, I only received the notice early in the morning and rushed over. I didn't even choose my outfit carefully. As he said this, he asked nervously, "Do I look good in this outfit today?" He had always been mindful of his image. Yoon Shir took a serious look at him. Today, he was wearing a black woolen coat, a white shirt, and a black shirt. Yoon Shir hesitated for a moment before giving a pertinent comment. It's quite normal. I have no choice. I'm not the main lead, so I can't steal the limelight from the main lead. As Hua Jin said this, he glared at Gu Xing's back view, which was surrounded by the media. I heard that he was banned some time ago. I thought I could replace him, but I didn't expect him to make a comeback. After a pause, he said regretfully, I could have been the male lead in this script. Yoon Shir smiled and agreed with him, but she was a little dazed. Today's Hua Jin was different from before. In the past, he was always lifeless in the filming crew. No matter who he met, he would always have an arrogant look on his face. However, she happened to see him today. When a crew member saw him, he greeted him fearfully and he replied with a smile. He became gentler and more humble than before. It was as if this was how he was supposed to be. Hua Jin saw that she was in a daze and waved his hand in front of her face unhappily. Why are you ignoring me? Did you not sleep well? Look at your eyes, they look so listless. Yoon Shir rubbed her eyes. I didn't sleep well last night. Here. Hua Jin passed her a bottle of eye drops and urged her, you're going to be on camera soon. What if you're so listless and ugly? At most, I'll make it into an emoticon package. Who knows, I might even become famous, Yoon Shir said self-deprecatingly. Hua Jin imagined it and chuckled. It's quite interesting to imagine it. Yoon Shir couldn't help but think of her own dark history. Previously, a netizen had taken a screenshot of a scene in the movie. In the end, because it was a crying scene, she hid in a corner outside the wedding and broke down and cried. At that moment, the screenshot was paused and her expression was so ugly that it was turned into an emoticon package and passed around by the netizens. Yoon Shir really felt that the emoticon package was ugly to the extreme. Yu and Xiao Yichen saw it and even used it as wallpaper. After looking at it for a while, they actually felt this expression. Your dark history is much more fun than Curator King's. The netizens can play with it for a long time. She raised her hands in surrender. I give up. Just as she finished speaking, she caught sight of a group of people walking over from the corner of her eye. Gu Xingza walked toward her and stopped right in front of her. Yichen's S's. There was a slight awkwardness in the air. The media looked at each other and focused their cameras on the two of them. They didn't want to miss even the tiniest detail. Regarding the two of them, the media had been making groundless accusations, hoping to find some clues. Chapter 2442. Most of the audience's expectations for this drama came from the pairing of the Golden Boy and the Jade Girl. Therefore, any news about the two of them would definitely be on the front page. Gu Xingza looked at her tenderly for a long time before he brushed past her and left. The group of reporters was stunned for half a second before they followed him like a swarm of bees. When the director arrived at the scene and saw the scene, he was furious and flew into a rage. Where did all these flies come from? Didn't I repeatedly emphasize that reporters without media credentials are not allowed to enter the venue? I don't know how these reporters managed to sneak into the venue, but they've made a mess and occupied all the media seats. The director immediately sent someone to maintain order. The opening ceremony began smoothly. Throughout the entire process, Hua Jin stuck to Yoon Shir's side. He would either complain that the venue was too noisy or gossip with her. It was as if he had opened up a chatterbox. However, Yoon Shir did not find him annoying at all. Instead, she thought that Hua Jin was really cute. When the ceremony was about to end, a staff member suddenly ran over and whispered to the director, "Director, Ji Yen is here." Ji Yen. Yes. That newbie. The investor specially arranged for her to join the cast as the second female lead. Oh. The director pondered for a moment and suddenly frowned in displeasure. Why is she only here now? She said that there was an accident on the road, so she's late. An accident? Yes, her car was rear-ended. She took a taxi and rushed here after dealing with the accident. The director muttered, "The ceremony is almost over. What is she doing here? Is she trying to make a fool of herself in front of the media? Tell her to get lost." "Director, I don't think that's a good idea." The staff member had some misgivings. She's the second female lead appointed by the investor. If we drive her home, she'll cry and make a scene in front of the investor. If the investor gets angry, we won't be able to do anything. The director's facial muscles twitched a few times before he finally said, "Let her in." Okay. Yun Shishir vaguely heard some of the conversation and asked curiously, "Who is this Ji Yen?" Hua Jin said quietly, "I heard that she's a newbie with a strong background who landed in the cast directly." "Where did you hear that?" "That's what I heard. Many people on the internet are trying to find out her identity because many people think that she looks very similar to Yen Bingqing." When Yun Shishir heard this, her heart skipped a beat, and her expression froze. Yen Bingqing. Yes, Hua Jin nodded and said, "Didn't Yen Bingqing disappear some time ago?" Then, Ji Yen posted a photo of her makeup on Weibo, and the netizens all said that the newcomer looks like Yen Bingqing. Many netizens even suspected that Yen Bingqing had disappeared some time ago because she had secretly gone abroad to have plastic surgery. Most likely, it's going to be melted down and remolded, right? Plastic surgery has a time limit. No matter how good you look at the beginning, it's useless. However, after a long time, some side effects will come. At that time, you need to be remolded. I also suspect that it's Yen Bingqing, but she just changed her stage name. At most, her eyes have become bigger, her nose has become more prominent, her chin has become a little sharper, and her breasts seem to have become a little bigger. Chapter 2443. Oh my God. So I'm not the only one who's suspicious. I also think that this Ji Yen is very suspicious. I also heard that after plastic surgery, it's necessary to take out the original prosthesis and reshape it. Look. Lin Ji's face is swollen recently. Could it be that she secretly went for a hyaluronic acid injection? Tisk, TSK, TSK. There's no such thing as a natural beauty in the entertainment industry. I think that Yun Shishir also looks like she came from a plastic surgery background. Yun Shishir was a little doubtful. Are they really that alike? Hua Jin pondered. Well. Although the facial features are a little different, the foundation is very similar. Do you have her makeup photos? No, I didn't save them. Hua Jin asked again, isn't she coming soon? As soon as his voice fell, a staff member came over with a gorgeously dressed woman. Yun Shishir fixed her eyes on the woman, and her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but widen her eyes in shock and let out an "ah" in disbelief. Seeing the look of surprise on her face, Hua Jin followed her gaze and saw Ji Yen walking over closely behind the staff member. That's her, he said. She's Ji Yen. Yun Shishir asked in astonishment. Hua Jin nodded. Yes. Do you also think that she looks very similar to Yen Bingqing? Yes. Not just a little, but they really look alike. Yun Shishir carefully observed her for a long time. Indeed, the foundation was exactly the same, except for a few differences. This Ji Yan's eyes were bigger, and the inner and outer corners of her eyes were opened. Her nose seemed to be a little higher, and her chin seemed to be sharper, probably because she had undergone bone-grinding surgery. But in this way, although she was beautiful, she was not as elegant as Yan Bingqing's original temperament. Yan Bingqing's appearance was very outstanding. She had big eyes, bright eyes, red lips, and white teeth. Her face was rich in collagen, and the curve of her jaw was not round, but it was not sharp either. She had the elegant aura of a queen, and her every movement was graceful. However, if this was really Yan Bingqing, after the plastic surgery, her face had become sharp, but her face was like a product on the assembly line. There was no recognition at all, just like those young models on the internet. Although they looked younger and more beautiful, they just lacked a temperament. Yun Shishir could not help but suspect the identity of this woman named Ji Yan in front of her. She really does look like Yan Bingqing. It was no wonder that the netizens were suspicious. She also felt that Yan Bingqing was 99% similar. When Yun Shishir looked at her, the woman looked at her too. Two pairs of eyes collided in the air. Yun Shishir could not help but be startled. She saw Ji Yan walking toward the director with a pair of enchanting eyes that vaguely revealed a ruthless and cold light. However, it was only a brief collision, and Ji Yan quickly withdrew her gaze. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, was shocked. It's her. Yun Shishir repeatedly recalled the gaze that Ji Yan threw her just now with lingering fear. It was ruthless and cold, like a sharp sword that wanted to pierce through her. Seeing her pale face, Hua Jin asked in confusion, Shishir, what's wrong? This Ji Yan might be Yan Bingqing herself. How can you be so sure? That gaze can't be wrong. Chapter 24:44. That gaze. It can't be wrong. It was full of bone-deep hatred, as if she wanted to tear her into pieces. Yun Shishir immediately asked the staff, is that Ji Yan Yan Bingqing? Yan Bingqing. The staff widened his eyes and shook his head quickly. No. You're not. Yun Shishir was surprised. Although I also think that Ji Yan and Yan Bingqing look quite similar, they are indeed not Yan Bingqing. Wasn't Yan Bingqing banned before? This Ji Yan probably had plastic surgery to look like Yan Bingqing, right? Her stage name even has the word Yan in it. Let me guess. The staff whispered in her ear, I'm guessing that she must have had plastic surgery to look like Yan Bingqing and hooked up with a sugar daddy. I heard that she didn't even have to audition before she directly squeezed out a B-list actress and landed in the production team. There are a lot of good newcomers these days. Hua Jin was also a little surprised. She's not Yan Bingqing. The staff nodded and said disapprovingly, yes. If she's Yan Bingqing, she's so beautiful and yet she still went under the knife. Isn't she sick? How is that possible? Hua Jin obviously didn't believe it. The facial features are very similar. The staff member smiled and then sighed. Don't underestimate plastic surgery. After saying that, he immediately went back to work as he had other things to do. Yun Shishir and Hua Jin looked at each other. After the opening ceremony, Hua Jin pestered Yun Shishir to play mahjong. Let's go. Shishir, let's play mahjong. Yun Shishir said gloomily, you seem to be very energetic today. Don't you like mahjong? I don't like it. Yun Shishir made an X gesture. I refuse to gamble. I don't gamble. Who else is there besides you and me? Yun Shishir's question left Hua Jin at a loss. Qin Zhou. No. Hua Jin had just dialed Qin Zhou's number to express his intentions when he immediately rejected, I'm not interested in mahjong. Lord Qin Zhou. Beep beep beep, the call was cut off. Hua Jin frowned as he held the phone in his hand. Yun Shishir patted his shoulder sympathetically. Let's go home. No. Hua Jin suddenly suggested, let's play mahjong at your place. Hua Jin suddenly thought of something and asked with a pale face, is the great demon king here? What great demon king? It's... Hua Jin said nervously. Your brother. Yun Shishir burst out laughing. She immediately thought of the two of them who were in a sorry state because they lost in a game of Fight the Landlord on New Year's Eve. It seemed that Hua Jin was traumatized by Gong Jia. Before meeting Gong Jia, she had always thought that Hua Jin was a complete little demon king. She did not expect that he would be subdued by Gong Jia. Gong Jia was the real great demon king. After being pestered by Hua Jin, Yun Shishir finally agreed. When the two of them reached home, Mu Yazhou was not home yet. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were at home. Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows suspiciously and asked, when does school start? Stupid mommy, didn't I tell you? It's next Monday. Oh, that means school starts in 4 days. Okay. Chapter 24:45. Yeah. Hua Jin walked over and squatted down in front of him. He pulled him into his arms and said teasingly, the opening ceremony for the new drama ended this morning, so I came to play with you. What do you want to play? Do you know how to play mahjong? Yes. Yu Yu paused and glanced at him in disdain. But Mu Yichen doesn't know how to play mahjong. 3 people can't play. Hua Jin was instantly troubled. That's right. We can't play mahjong with 3 people. Yu Yu asked Mu Yichen, do you know how to play mahjong? Xiao Yichen sipped on his yogurt and shook his head blankly. No. Yun Shishir suddenly thought of someone. I thought of someone. It's convenient for me to come over. Who is it? Yun Shishir found the phone book, took out a business card and dialed the number. When the call went through, she smiled and said, Jun Mo, I'm Shishir. Are you busy now? It's Shishir. Jun Mo's neutral and deep voice came from the other end. She replied gently, I'm not busy. What's up? Where are you? At home. What a coincidence. Do you like to play mahjong? We're short of 1 player. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Yun Shishir ran over to open the door and saw Jun Mo standing at the door. When she saw her, she smiled and greeted her. Long time no see. Yun Shishir welcomed her in. Yes. Jun Mo, long time no see. Jun Mo recalled. Speaking of which, the last time we met was at the celebration party for The Green Apple. Speaking of The Green Apple, in fact, Jun Mo had played the male supporting role in the movie. During the screening process, there were many discussions about this role among netizens. After all, it was rare for an actress to play a male role. At most, some dramas adapted from Chinese opera would use the role of the female lead. Very few mainstream commercial movies would do this. Qin Zhou took a risk. But it had to be said that although Jun Mo's acting skills were inexperienced, her emotions were immersed in the movie and she played the role of the supporting actor with the kind of feeling that the audience was looking forward to. In addition, her looks were outstanding. She had good looks that many young actors couldn't match. Her facial features were handsome, and she had an elegant and gentle temperament. After the movie was released, apart from Yin Xiaochuan and Yin Dongyu, her role was also very eye-catching. It set off a trend of androgyny. Many girls imitated her style of dress, hairstyle, and makeup. Recently, he had taken on many movies. What surprised Yun Shishir the most was that she actually accepted a spy movie, Oriole Behind. This movie was produced by Central Pictures and was made up of veteran actors. As the only rookie in the cast, Jun Mo's performance was highly anticipated by the media. As soon as Jun Mo arrived, everyone was present. The 4 of them sat down to play mahjong. When Xiao Yichen saw that they were playing mahjong, he didn't want to watch TV anymore. He put the TV aside and went over to Yun Shishir's side to watch the game quietly. The 4 of them chatted as they played mahjong. Hua Jin and Jun Mo had acted in a television drama together before. The two of them got along well in the production team. Hua Jin had a good impression of Jun Mo, so they got along very well. Hua Jin and Jun Mo were both very addicted to smoking. When their cards were good, they would smoke a cigarette. When their cards were bad, they would smoke another cigarette. Fortunately, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen didn't mind. At most, they would avoid the two of them and grumble, "You're so addicted to smoking." When Jun Mo heard this, she immediately apologized, "I'm sorry." Hua Jin also stopped smoking. Chapter 2446. However, Yu Yu said, "It's okay. There's no pregnant woman here." Jun Mo couldn't help but laugh. "You know that pregnant women can't smell smoke?" "Yes." Yu Yu cursed silently in his heart. Had he seriously checked the information? Back then, he thought that his mommy was pregnant, so he did a lot of research. In the end, she wasn't pregnant, and he was even depressed for a period of time. Hua Jin muttered as he played mahjong, "Today is the opening ceremony of the new drama. Gu Xingze is making a comeback." Yun Shishir's hand froze in the middle of picking the cards. She lifted her gaze to glance at the idol before lowering her head again to sort the cards. East wind. Hua Jin also threw a east wind and said, "If it weren't for him, the male lead of this drama would have been me. In the end, Gu Xingze came out of nowhere and intercepted me." Jun Mo mercilessly exposed him. The investors of this drama liked Gu Xingze to begin with. "How can you say that he intercepted me? I can't accept it. Why can he and Shishir be nominated as the best on-screen couple? Shishir and I are more compatible." Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Jun Mo continued to expose her. "Compared to Xingze, you're far inferior. The actresses who acted with him became famous." I'm not convinced." Jun Mo suddenly thought of something and silently sized up Yun Shishir. Then, she said, "Some time ago, I saw Xingze with a woman who looked very similar to Shishir." Yun Shishir was stunned. She looked up and said blankly, "Huh? A woman who looks like me?" Jun Mo said, "I thought it was you. That woman really looks like you. Judging from her figure, she's probably a young model. However, although her facial features are similar, it's obvious that she's undergone surgery." This news was even on the news. Yun Shishir was shocked. "Could you have seen wrongly?" I went up to greet him. Yun Shishir widened her eyes in surprise. "Ha!" Jun Mo explained, "Because I got along well with Xingze on set, I saw him and went up to greet him. That's why I saw that woman up close and dispelled my suspicions." Although they were similar, there were still some differences. After all, no matter how brilliant the plastic surgery is, it's impossible to perfectly replicate a person. "Oh." Yun Shishir's expression remained calm. "Xingze has always had very few scandals in the industry, and there's rarely any gossip. Indeed, that's why I was very surprised when I saw him and that woman coming out of the hotel. As far as I can remember, he never had any women around him." Hotel. Yun Shishir's fingertips trembled slightly, but her eyes quickly regained their calmness and concealed the trace of surprise. Hotel. It was hard for people not to exaggerate when he walked in and out of the hotel with a woman in his arms. Coming out of the hotel, what else could it be? Yun Shishir suddenly furrowed her brows and felt a little uncomfortable. It wasn't that she felt unbalanced, but she heard from Jun Mo that the woman was a young model and had obviously undergone plastic surgery. In her heart, Gu Xingze was perfect, like a Prince Charming, and could not be tarnished. The young model industry was very messy. In order to climb up the ranks, those young models would do anything to climb up. Could this young model have used Gu Xingze as a springboard to climb up the ranks? Did Gu Xingze have feelings for her? Chapter 2447. Just as Yun Shishir was letting her imagination run wild, she heard Hua Jin say disapprovingly, "After all, men have their biological needs too. As a popular idol, it's impossible for him to have a girlfriend openly. Gu Xingze is a normal man, so of course he has his biological needs. I've always been surprised that he hasn't had any scandals in the industry. I thought he was an immortal who didn't belong to the mortal world. I didn't expect him to be an ordinary man." Yun Shishir picked her cards silently. But she didn't agree with Hua Jin's words. That wasn't the case. Gu Xingze wasn't an ordinary man. Jun Mo said quietly, "Actually, I'm not surprised. Maybe Gu Xingze is also serious. Can't celebrities have private lives?" Yun Shishir suddenly said gloomily, "Even if he has a girlfriend, he shouldn't be restricted." Hua Jin said, "Of course celebrities can have private lives. As long as it's not exposed to the public, especially idols, hardcore fans won't be able to stand it. Just like you. You're very popular now, but if news of your marriage is exposed, it will affect your career." "Affect?" "Yes. You can act as a young girl in idol dramas now, but if you get married and have children, the fans will feel awkward and find it difficult to get into character." "Hua Jin, does the company have requirements for you too?" Yun Shishir suddenly asked curiously. "Of course. In the past, it was explicitly stated that dating was not allowed." Hua Jin said, "This restriction is even stricter for male celebrities. The company absolutely forbids me from dating." Previously, when Gu Xingze and a female celebrity were involved in a scandal, a fan jumped off a building to commit suicide. This piece of news was sensational at the time and caused a huge uproar. The anti-fans on the internet were all denouncing Gu Xingze. In the end, the superstar stepped forward to issue an apology and clarify the scandal. That poor fan actually jumped off a building to commit suicide because of a scandal. "It's not worth it." Jun Mo said, "Gu Xingze's fan army is very scary. I'm really surprised that you can become popular, Shishir. Maybe it's because you're more likable." In the past, Gu Xingze was rumored to have had plastic surgery on their faces. Although they were pretty, they looked mean and unlikable. "Your character in the movie is more likable, so there aren't many haters." Yun Shishir said in a daze, "It's really tough being a celebrity, Xingze." In the hotel, Gu Xingze was wearing a bathrobe. He sat on the sofa and read his script silently. A pretty woman walked out of the bathroom and called out to him softly, but seeing that he was indifferent, she immediately came to his side, put his script aside, straddled him, lifted his chin, and said unhappily, "Are you still reading your script? You've been looking at it for the whole afternoon, and you're ignoring me even when I talk to you." Gu Xingze did not seem to be annoyed by her coquettish behavior. He lifted his eyes and looked at her beautiful face. Her facial features and eyebrows were extremely similar to Yun Shishir's. Especially the contours, it was like a carbon copy. He held her chin and kissed it gently. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What's wrong?" "I just feel bored." The woman wrapped her arms around his shoulders and snuggled up to him coquettishly. "You've been reading your script and ignoring me. Of course I feel bored." Chapter 24:48. Gu Xingze lowered his head expressionlessly and kissed her lips. However, no matter how much he kissed her, he felt that it was tasteless. There was no feeling. It was as if he was chewing wax. Just as the woman was anticipating his next move, his kiss came to an abrupt end. Gu Xingze pushed her away gently and took the script. He flipped to the page that he had marked earlier and started reading it again. The woman seemed to have read his mind and stopped fooling around. She sat down obediently and leaned on his shoulder. She asked curiously, "Are you acting as a racer in the new drama?" "Yeah. I heard that you're a racer, so your driving skills should be pretty good." Gu Xingze flipped to the next page silently. His attitude was very indifferent. The woman seemed to have noticed his indifferent attitude and frowned in disappointment. She knew very well in her heart that after this night, their relationship would come to an end. She met Gu Xingze at a private party. The atmosphere in the pub was lively and abnormally noisy. Men and women were indulging in debauchery. However, he was the only one who sat quietly in the corner. He didn't drink or participate in the hubbub. He only looked at the stage silently with a cold expression. At that time, she had just debuted. The company saw that she looked like Yun Shishir and arranged for her to undergo plastic surgery. The plastic surgeon adjusted her facial features according to Yun Shishir's model. Hence, she immediately caught his attention at that party. He was the Prince Charming in her heart, and also her first man. However, the process was like a moth flying into a flame. She threw herself at him passionately without any complaints or regrets. However, she realized that from the beginning to the end, she was just a substitute. What he was searching for in her was the shadow of another woman. That shadow was probably Yun Shishir, right? She had watched the movie, The Green Apple, and felt that Gu Xingze's so-called acting was just a show of his true feelings. Acting could be deceiving, but the feelings in his eyes could not be. There was no pretense. All the affection seemed to be able to penetrate a person's soul. She was envious, extremely envious. More than once, he caressed her face and looked at her, but it was as if he was looking at another woman through her. She felt like a substitute, but she was also immersed in this relationship. At the beginning of their relationship, it was just that each of them had their own needs. She wanted to get some resources, but he was just looking for comfort from her. She could tell that he was very lonely. Whether it was physical or psychological, after being suppressed for so long, it was as if he was sick. However, even though it was hard to control his emotions, he still had to control them well. From the beginning, he had said, "Don't get too immersed in the role. Everyone just wants what they want." She knew in her heart that he had no feelings for her. When he kissed her just now, she seemed to feel his helplessness and disappointment from that ambiguous kiss. She also felt that this relationship had finally reached its climax. Until midnight, he was still reading the script. It was as if he did not feel tired at all. Or perhaps, he had put all his energy into the script. That way, he would feel less tired. The woman knew very well that everything should end here. Chapter 24:49. She knew very well that no matter how much she messed around, she would never get what she really wanted. Hence, she stood up and obediently entered the room. She tactfully put on her clothes and carried her bag. When she walked out, Gu Xingze was still reading the script. However, there was an extra check on the coffee table. She walked over and picked up the check. It was a heart-wrenching number. The woman smiled and thanked him gratefully. "Thank you." Gu Xingze quietly flipped a page with a cold expression. She suddenly walked over and hugged him gently. She asked softly, "Xingze, you love that woman very much, don't you?" She did not say the name of the woman called Yun Shishir. Gu Xingze finally looked away from the script. He looked up and his eyes were twinkling. "If you like her, why don't you be together with her?" The woman was curious. With his charm, what woman would not succumb to his tenderness? Gu Xingze stared at her for a long time and finally said, "I can give her everything, but I can't love her." He could give her everything. But he could not love her. Why? The woman did not understand and was extremely surprised. Gu Xingze smiled mockingly. "Because it will only make her suffer." The woman opened her mouth in shock and frowned. Her heart ached. She looked at him and did not say anything. She quietly put the check into her bag and turned to leave without saying a word. Gu Xingze looked at the script and highlighted the key points. The plot was that after the female lead found out that the male lead's father was the one who had caused her father's downfall, she painfully confessed to the male lead. "Please don't love me. Your love will only make me suffer." Let go, please let go. He closed the script and closed his eyes slightly. His eyelashes trembled slightly. The woman lowered her head and left the hotel. Little did she know that when she opened the hotel door, the paparazzi who were hiding dozens of meters away raised their cameras and snapped a few shots of her leaving. However, she was completely unaware of it. She waved her hand, got into a taxi, and left. After she left, the man raised his camera and flipped through the images he had just taken. He laughed joyfully. Okay. Time to pack up. Go back and submit your manuscript. The next day, a set of photos was exposed on Weibo, causing a great sensation. On Qingguang Entertainment's official Weibo, a group of photos were published. There were a total of 6 still photos and 3 moving pictures. Among them, there were a few photos of Gu Xingze walking into a hotel with a woman in his arms. After zooming in, the woman's back was facing him, so it was difficult to recognize her face. However, Gu Xingze's facial features were especially recognizable. It was easy to recognize that it was Gu Xingze himself. There were a few pictures of a woman leaving the hotel alone, getting into a taxi and leaving. There were also 3 gifs from the hotel's surveillance cameras. Gu Xingze entered the room with the woman in his arms. 5 hours later, the woman left alone. 2 of the photos captured the woman's face. Although the images were blurry, the woman's basic outline could still be recognized. Wasn't this Yun Shishir? Once the photos were published, it immediately caused a huge uproar. Many fans were shocked by Gu Xingze's shocking scandal. This set of photos quickly became a hot topic. Chapter 2450. Breaking news: Orange Light Studio exposed lucky couple's secret relationship, leaving alone after 5 hours of tryst, extremely loving. The fans were extremely concerned about the so-called relationship that had been exposed. Of course, there were 2 groups of fans. One group supported the lucky couple's relationship. At the same time, they complained that the company must have written rules and regulations that forbade celebrities from dating. But if it's Yun Shishir, we really don't mind. Please love to your heart's content. The lucky couple is so loving. I've been following them since The Love Diary. Although I'm not a die-hard fan of Gu Xingze, I feel that as a boyfriend, he must be a great boyfriend. I also like Yun Shishir because they went to watch The Green Apple and unexpectedly felt that they were a good match. A perfect match. The other group were Gu Xingze's die-hard fans. After hearing the news, they went to Yun Shishir's Weibo to make a fuss. Vixen. Seducing our master Xingze. She must be trying to use Xingze's name to hype herself up. Shameless. That's right. Vixen, please keep yourself clean. Gu Xingze is our husband, please know what's good for you and get lost. Yun Shishir woke up early because her schedule was packed. She had to rush for an interview in the morning, shoot a pictorial in the afternoon, and film a variety show in the evening. However, as she rinsed her mouth, she scrolled through Weibo. When she saw the trending topic Gu Xingze's relationship, she clicked on it out of curiosity. She thought that it was just idle gossip among fans, but she didn't expect to see a set of photos. Gu Xingze and woman met in a hotel at night. After 5 hours of intimacy, the woman left alone. The mysterious woman is actually Yun Shishir. The lucky couple relationship is confirmed. Pfft. Yun Shishir spat a mouthful of mouthwash on the mirror. Her eyes widened as she clicked on the photos one by one. Although the pixels were blurry, it wasn't difficult to recognize that this woman's facial features were indeed very similar to hers. If she wasn't in person, she would definitely think that this was Yun Shishir. Most importantly, she was just lying down at home last night. How could she be shot like this? She clicked on the other photos and saw the surveillance footage of the woman holding Gu Xingze's arm as they walked into the private room of the hotel. She frowned and was a little surprised. Qin Zhou suddenly called. As soon as she answered the call, Qin Zhou shouted her name furiously, Shir. Yun Shir couldn't help but hold the phone a little further away. This sound almost broke her eardrums. Why are you so angry so early in the morning? Where were you last night? Qin Zhou went straight to the point. Yun Shir said gloomily, I'm at home. Then, can you explain what's going on with the news on Weibo? Qin Zhou obviously recognized her as the woman. Because they were too alike. Yun Shir said with a long face, I saw that Weibo post too. It really wasn't me. Great Qin, I've been wronged. It's not you. Qin Zhou quickly calmed down, but he still asked suspiciously, are you sure? Of course. Do you want to get a witness? Qin Zhou said. There's no need. Then, what's going on with those photos? I really don't know. Yun Shir immediately said, I was obediently reading the script at home last night. After reading it, I went to bed. My husband can testify. Chapter 24:51. I'll go and verify the situation. Beep, 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 the guy hung up very quickly. She reckoned that he had gone to look for Gu Xingzi to verify the situation. Yun Shir sighed. She wiped the water off the glass and took another mouthful of mouthwash. Bam! Yu burst through the door. She raised her cell phone and rushed in with tears in her eyes. Mommy, did you cheat on me? Pfft. Yun Shir spat out another mouthful of mouthwash in shock. She turned around in embarrassment and saw Yu holding her cell phone. She walked over with a pained expression. Mommy, did you go out behind Daddy's back last night? Yun Shir stared at him silently. Yu was bawling her eyes out. She raised her cell phone in front of her and said with tears in her eyes, don't tell me that you went to the hotel with Gu Xingzi to read the script. Early in the morning, the cell phone received a notification. Because he followed Yun Shir's Weibo, the trending topic was sent to him very quickly. Yu was shocked when she saw the notification. She rushed over with her cell phone. That's not me. Yun Shir explained helplessly, idiot, take a good look. Is the woman in the photo your dearest mommy? Yu looked at the photo suspiciously and suddenly said, that's right. Dong, Yun Shir gave him a knock on the head. How can you mistake your dearest mommy for someone else? I'm so disappointed in Yu. Yu immediately looked at her cell phone again and again. She finally sighed and patted her chest gently. She was so agitated that she almost burst into tears. You scared me. I saw wrongly. That's not mommy in the photo. Mommy's legs aren't that short. You actually suspect that your mommy is having an affair with another man. Yun Shir's gaze was dangerous and sinister. Yu immediately hugged his mother's long legs and explained, Mommy, Yu knows he was wrong. Yu just woke up, so the diffraction isn't good. Yun Shir elegantly wiped her face with a towel and snorted arrogantly. Humph. What's the point of explaining now? Men, drag him out and behead him. Yu hugged her and explained to her. Suddenly, he said curiously, but this woman looks so much like mommy. Did she get plastic surgery to look like mommy? Who knows? I don't care. Yun Shir slapped his chubby hands away. Get out of the way. Mommy won't make it in time. As soon as she walked out of the bathroom, Yu followed behind her eagerly and asked eagerly, Mommy, do you have work today? Yes, it's full. Then I'll prepare breakfast for mommy. It's okay. I don't have time. Yun Shir took a sandwich from the fridge and heated it up. Yu passed her a glass of warm milk. Be good and stay at home with Xiao Yichen. Don't bully your brother. Remember to wake daddy up for work later. Oh, got it. Yu Yu watched as Yun Shishir left. In the room, Xiao Yichen also rushed out with his cell phone. However, he saw Yu Yu standing at the entrance. When he turned around, the two little lads looked at each other. "Where's mommy?" "She went to work." "Ah," Xiao Yichen leaned over and asked worriedly, "Have you seen Weibo?" "What?" "It's this." Xiao Yichen immediately put the cell phone in front of him. Yu Yu glanced at it and his face suddenly turned cold. Chapter 2452. What should we do? Could the woman in the photo be mommy? Yu Yu slapped his face speechlessly and pushed him away. "You can't even recognize your own mommy. Drag him out and behead him." With that, he turned around and walked away, seemingly forgetting that he had mistaken his own mommy for someone else. When Xiao Yichen heard this, he came to his senses and pestered him. "I knew it. Mommy would never meet another man behind daddy's back. But, this woman really looks like mommy." When Yu Yu heard this, he suddenly turned to face him and raised his eyebrows. "You think they look alike too?" "Yeah. Very alike. Very alike." I broke out in a cold sweat just looking at them. Yu Yu furrowed his eyebrows worriedly. Indeed, the resemblance was too great. If this matter blew up, it would not be good for mommy. Yu Yu rubbed his chin and muttered, "I don't know where this woman came from, but judging from her figure, she looks like a young model in the internet celebrity circle. Maybe it's just like mommy's face. Plastic surgery. Oh, right. Why didn't I think of that?" Xiao Yichen slapped his head in frustration and said gloomily, "I forgot that there's such a thing as plastic surgery. Didn't Brother Hua Jin say yesterday that he saw Gu Xingze entering a hotel with a woman? Maybe it's this woman." Yu Yu stopped abruptly. Xiao Yichen did not know, but he knew that Gu Xingze seemed to be deeply in love with mommy. Could it be Huanyu Building? In Ji Lin's office. Qin Zhou threw a stack of documents on the table. His face was ashen. "Xingze, this rascal, he's simply messing around." Ji Lin leaned back in his chair and sized him up calmly. He asked, "Have you found out about this woman?" "Yeah, according to the information, she's a young model who just debuted. Her name is something like Li Xian, TSK. What a gaudy name." Qin Zhou sat down on the sofa with his legs crossed. After a moment of silence, he said, "I've found her information, including some information about her background." "Which agency did she sign with?" Qin Zhou replied in disdain, "Ease is a modeling agency backed by American Airlines." On the surface, it sounds dignified, but in reality, it's just a sex agency. Most of the models signed by it are high-class public relations professionals who specialize in signing peripheral girls. The average cost is 50,000 yuan per night. The company's official website put the photos of these models on the homepage. On the surface, it was to show off their style, but in reality, these models were clearly priced. High-class prostitute? Not entirely. However, most of them were in the mud. This Li Xian, just debuted not long ago. I don't know what methods she used to get close to Xingzhe. I don't know what her motive is. Is this model clean? It's pretty clean. He's just entered the industry and doesn't know anything. Now that this has happened, he's probably scared out of his wits. Thinking of this, Qin Zhou was furious. Had Gu Xingze fallen? How could he play with a young model? Although this young model had just debuted and was considered clean, he couldn't just mess around with a face that was specially made to look like Yun Shishir. When did he become so frivolous? Now that this incident has happened, I'm in a bit of a dilemma. I don't know if I should clarify or not. Incident. Chapter 2453. What do you mean? Look at the photos that were taken secretly. Although it's a little blurry, if they didn't know their whereabouts beforehand, they definitely wouldn't have been able to take such a clear shot of their faces. If I'm not wrong, this paparazzi was probably hired by Ease. Qin Zhou was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He sighed and said, I'm also worried about this. Ji Lin gently knocked on the table and said expressionlessly, if this entertainment company is smart, they will probably bribe the media and create a series of articles. There were two ways to create hype in the entertainment industry. The first way was to tie up relationships or create hype with topics. For example, previously, there was a celebrity couple who spent a huge sum of 200 million on their wedding. The wedding was so grand that it was comparable to the wedding of a royal family. It was called the wedding of the century. But in reality, many of the 200 million wedding were sponsored by investors. They valued the celebrity couple's influence and wanted to create a big scene. The more famous the couple was, the more money the investors would make. Not only did this couple not invest much in the wedding, but they also used the wedding to create hype. The female celebrity directly became an A-lister and her popularity soared. The wedding was hyped up until the end of the wedding. The couple used the remaining effects to create hype for a month. Many people were envious and called the man the perfect husband. They were extremely envious of the female lead. Both parties benefited from the wedding. The audience was the ones who were fooled. The other way to create hype was to use one's own negative reputation to create hype. Ji Lin and Qin Zhou were a little worried. They were worried that this young model named Li Xianer would be manipulated by the company. They were worried that Yun Shishir would be used as a springboard to create hype with the fame of Little Yun Shishir. Not only that, they could also use the exposure of the Hotel Door scandal to create hype with Gu Xing's influence. When Yun Shishir arrived at the company, Qin Zhou and Ji Lin summoned her to the director's office. In the office, a few key personnel from the public relations department were also present. Everyone was on high alert and the atmosphere was tense. She was scared out of her wits when she saw this scene. What happened? Qin Zhou glanced at her and said in annoyance, Shishir, the hotel incident between you and Xingzhe has already caused a ruckus on Weibo, yet you're still so calm. It's really the case that the eunuchs are more worried than the emperor. Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Isn't the woman in the photo me? Haven't you issued a clarification statement yet? Qin Zhou said gloomily, clarify. Right now, it was no longer a question of whether or not to clarify. Now, I would rather you be the heroine of this story. You've been checkmated, do you know that? Yun Shishir was stunned and looked at him blankly. When I saw that Weibo post this morning, to be honest, I was also very surprised. I don't know if this woman had plastic surgery, but her face is very similar to mine. After a pause, she continued, even if she came out of the hotel, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something going on between her and Xingzhe, right? She came out of the hotel alone, but that's not important. The point is, she walked into the hotel with her arm around Xingzhe's arm. This was also captured by the media and is now the talk of the town. Chapter 2454. Then, what should we do now? We'll bide our time for now. Let's see if the technical department can find the information I want. What information? Ji Lin suddenly said, the photos of this woman before her plastic surgery. Qin Zhou suddenly urged, anyway, don't panic. You still have to prepare for an interview in the morning, so go and do your makeup first. Yun Shishir nodded and turned to leave. Just as she left, Mushi suddenly rushed in and raised the tablet to the manager, saying indignantly, Boss Qin, Li Xian, opened her Weibo account 5 minutes ago and posted a photo of herself along with a statement. He hurriedly took the tablet from her. The image on the tablet stopped at Li Xian's Weibo. In just 5 minutes, the company had already given her a verified title. It seemed that the company had been planning this for a long time. Model? Actress? Qin Zhou asked doubtfully. Actress. Had she ever acted before? The highlight was the newly posted Weibo post. She had posted a photo, which was strangely familiar. Yoon Shirshir had done a similar photo shoot before. This Lee Hsien had probably imitated Yoon Shirshir's photo shoot. It seemed that she was trying to imitate Yoon Shirshir's style to the end. The photo was indeed in the style of a flower fairy. The pink dress she was wearing was exactly the same as the one Yoon Shirshir had done before. Even the flower crown on her head was the same. Not only that, the composition, rendering, posture, and even expression were exactly the same. Only the background was slightly different, but the style was still the same. The announcement she had posted and a series of statements openly admitted that she was the real female lead of the hotel door. Although her words were high-sounding, in the statement, she only admitted that she and Gu Xingze were friends and that they had only chatted in the hotel and did nothing else. Putting aside what had happened between her and Gu Xingze for the time being, the two of them had entered the hotel together. Her statement would only make it seem that she was trying to cover it up, and the public would only interpret it as a deliberate cover-up. The wording of the statement was extremely innocent and aggrieved. The style of a living white lotus was vivid on paper. The fans were quite shocked when they heard this news. Gosh! It turned out that the female lead of this incident wasn't Yoon Shirshir but someone else. Where did this Lee Hsien come from, though? They had never heard of her. A nameless model with certification as an actress and model. More importantly, she had not appeared in any films or TV shows. She didn't even have a supporting role. At this point, the fans felt unbalanced. They suddenly regretted it. They would rather the female lead of this incident was Yoon Shirshir than this woman of unknown origin. What was even more infuriating was that Lee Hsien insisted that she did not have plastic surgery, nor did she copy Yoon Shirshir's looks. Her looks were natural, and she even hinted that the reason why the two looked alike was probably due to Yoon Shirshir's plastic surgery, which resulted in them coincidentally meeting each other's looks. Shameless. Sure enough, within minutes of the Weibo post being posted, the number of comments and reposts had exceeded 10,000. Many fans of Yoon Shirshir and Gu Xingze ran to the Weibo comment section to curse. But this was the effect that ease wanted. Chapter 2455. This was also one of the tricks used to create hype. First, they would use a black mark to create hype and attract attention. Once they became famous, they would use other means to appear innocent and pitiful on shows to clear their names. Usually, the audience would not be hostile to beautiful people. Hence, the prettier a female artiste was, the easier it was for them to clear their names. However, Qin Zhou quickly calmed down. Having been in this industry for so long, he had seen all kinds of storms. He had seen too many of such tricks, so he did not find it strange. Mu Shi, on the other hand, was furious. When she saw Lee Hsien open a Weibo account, she was so angry that she almost smashed her tablet. How shameless! This woman is simply a white lotus. She clearly had plastic surgery based on Yoon Shirshir's features, yet this woman still refuses to admit it. Not only does she refuse to admit it, but she even opened a Weibo account and posted a statement. It's obvious that she wants to use Shirshir to create hype. Shirshir alone is not enough, she even wants to drag Xingze into this and create hype together. She's aiming for Xingze and Shirshir's popularity. I'm about to die from anger. The corners of Qin Zhou's lips twitched as his facial muscles stiffened. Xingze, that rascal, is too ridiculous. Mu Shi asked curiously, is there any reaction from Xingze's side? Is there any movement from his studio? Qin Zhou said coldly, Xingze must remain silent. This is the best way to deal with this crisis. He must deal with scandals that are unfavorable to him coldly. The more he tries to explain and clarify, the more chaotic it will be. Why? As an idol's fan, the fans hope to see Gu Xingze, the person involved in this incident, stand up and give an explanation. However, this explanation can only be valid. Now that Gu Xingze can't give a valid explanation, he can only remain silent. Otherwise, the situation will be even more chaotic. I'm so angry. Mu Shi was about to cry from anger. I've never seen such a shameless woman. In this circle, there are many shameless people. Then, what should we do next? Mu Shi huffed. Don't tell me we're just going to let this woman use Shirshir to create hype. Judging from the other company's stance, it's obvious that they're not letting go of Shirshir. Qin Zhou also found it troublesome. Although Shirshir is not a A-lister now, she's very popular. If she's involved with this woman, it'll only appear degrading. That's why we're not making any moves for now and see how things will develop. That's too. I was bitten by a dog while walking. If I bite it back, it will be very degrading. After Yun's interview with Yun Yun's Shirshir. However, after they sat down and exchanged a few pleasantries, the editor went straight to the point and brought up Li Xiang. Shirshir, what do you think of Li Xiang? You don't know about this? The editor was very surprised. This morning, Qingguang Entertainment published a set of photos on Weibo. The model who went in and out of the hotel with Gu Xingze is called Li Xian. Oh. Yun Shirshir nodded. Frowning slightly, she calmly asked, "May I ask if this matter has anything to do with this interview?" Chapter 2456. The editor was slightly embarrassed and said, "Yu and Xingzhe were voted as the most popular on-screen couple. Previously, during the filming of The Love Diary, the fans have been talking about your chemistry with Xingzhe. The lucky couple is very popular, isn't it? Even I think that you and Xingzhe are a good match. You've also mentioned that on-screen couple is only on-screen, so there's no need to magnify it to reality. Xingzhe is a very outstanding senior. As a junior, I have no right to comment on his personal life. If Li Xian is his lover, I'll also give them my sincere blessings." His flawless answer left everyone dumbfounded. Mu Shi smiled from the side. Let's put this topic aside for now. The main topic of today's interview is Shirshir's new drama and Lethal Beauty, which is about to be broadcasted on major satellite channels. Let's skip some irrelevant topics. Despite the editor's dissatisfaction, he had no choice but to put this topic aside. After the interview, Mu Shi said unhappily, "Shirshir, I really feel aggrieved for you. That Li Xian is using you as a springboard to hype herself up. I really can't take it lying down. This is the industry. If you want to establish yourself, you have to learn to face these unspoken rules." With that, she added, "We still have a pictorial shoot in the afternoon. Let's go for lunch." Emichim, Yun Shirshir made an appointment with Qin Zhou and Ji Lin, and the four of them went to a restaurant next to the company for lunch. The atmosphere was low during the meal. Qin Zhou was still scrolling through Weibo, his expression ugly. Even Ji Lin, who had always been exceptionally calm, had his brows tightly knitted together. Clearly, the current situation was not optimistic. Yun Shirshir ordered noodles, but she kept fiddling with the noodles in her bowl with her chopsticks as if she was chewing wax. Weibo was in an uproar. Li Xian's Weibo post this morning had already reached 150,000 comments. There were countless scolding below, but Li Xian seemed indifferent and did not make any further comments. This was also a common method of creating hype. The more one did not make a statement, the more attention and anger they would attract. Mu Shi was a little worried. How long will this situation last? Qin Zhou drank a glass of wine in annoyance and put his phone aside. "I'm not afraid of ruthless people, but I'm afraid of shameless people." This was the truth. Ji Lin said, "Let's put this matter aside for now. Take care of yourself. Later, we'll think of some countermeasures." Qin Zhou pondered for a moment and suddenly said, however, if Li Xian insists on creating hype, I don't mind playing along. A glimmer of hope appeared on her face. What do you mean? Qin Zhou replied, she will definitely be using Shishir to create hype. Similarly, Shishir will also be using her to create more exposure. Yun Shishir was silent for a long time. Suddenly, she swallowed a mouthful of noodles and sighed. When Gu Xingze arrived at the studio, it was in a state of chaos. Upon seeing him, they greeted him with trepidation. Master Gu. After he terminated his contract with Qin Zhou, he set up his own studio. Before he came back, because he was banned, many veterans left. Therefore, the public relations aspect of the crisis was extremely weak. Until now, these guys still hadn't come up with a complete plan. Chapter 2457. Gu Xingze was also clear that there was a team behind this. Li Xian's company also wanted to make use of this incident to create hype. It was not easy for a modeling company to produce a celebrity. Most of them were not popular. If the transition was successful, they might be able to get a small role in a script. If the transition was not successful, they could only become the playthings of those rich people. Once the shelf life was over, they could only be eliminated. Some of them would marry rich businessmen, and some would leave the industry. It was not easy to produce Li Xian. He went to his office and closed the door. He suddenly felt upset when he thought of the heated discussion on Weibo. Until now, what bothered him the most was not his reputation, nor was it the impact on his popularity. His mind was filled with Yun Shishir's cold and detached gaze. After this incident, what kind of eyes would she use to look at him? He actually cared a lot about what she thought. Would she think of him as a frivolous person? Or would she think of him as the scum of the entertainment industry? He cared a lot. However, there had been no news from Yun Shishir. With Qin Zhou in charge, she would definitely choose to bide her time. However, he had seen Yun Shishir's live interview in the morning. She seemed to be very indifferent about this incident, even indifferent. She had completely distanced herself from it. He actually felt a little lonely. In the afternoon, Yun Shishir had a set of pictorials to shoot. This set of pictorials was specially invited by the magazine. Moreover, the country's top photographer would be in charge of the overall situation. Yun Shishir and the photographer talked for a while. The final result of the discussion was that they would use mermaids as the script and concept to shoot a set of underwater pictorials for the magazine. The styling team brought a few clothes. One was white, and the other was red. The photographer chose the red one for her. He said that the red one would definitely look amazing in the photos. The makeup artist styled her soft black hair and put on heavy retro makeup. Her facial features were very soft and had a classic charm. Therefore, retro makeup was very suitable for her, especially her red lips. It was February and the weather was still a little cold. Although they chose a pool with a constant temperature, Yun Shishir was still shivering when she went into the water in a light dress. The photographer let her get used to the water temperature and then followed her into the water. Shooting in bed was a test of one's figure. What was amazing was that Yun Shishir's performance was excellent. She followed the photographer's instructions and made many seductive poses underwater. She was as enchanting and beautiful as the daughter of the sea god. The dark blue water and the bright red dress complemented each other. Yun Shishir's exquisite makeup, black hair, silky eyes, and eyelashes were intertwined with her hair. When she looked back and smiled, her lips were red and her teeth were white. She was very seductive, yet she had the aura of a queen. At the end of the shoot, the photographer held the camera as if he had found a treasure and browsed through the photos one by one. He was so excited that he was speechless. If Yun Shishir, who was floating in the water, smiled knowingly at his praise. Shishir, it's been hard on you. After the shoot, Mushi immediately took a blanket and draped it over her. She then helped her to the changing room and hurriedly changed her wet clothes. Chapter 24:58. The cameraman praised you for your good performance. I took a few looks at the photos. The effect is really great. The effect is good, but I also paid quite a price. Yun Shishir said softly, although the water is at a constant temperature, it's also very cold. I'm freezing to death. Especially after coming out of the pool, when the wind blew slightly, it was bone-chilling. There was still a show to record at night. Just thinking about it gave Yun Shishir a splitting headache and made her feel dizzy. The show was a first-tier satellite TV variety show with the ACE ratings, A-Star Alliance. In order to cater to the audience, there were many small segments about physical fitness. Most of the guests who participated in the show were there to promote their movies or TV series. This time, the production team of Lethal Beauty wanted to promote the new drama, so the main creators, including Hua Jin, were participating in the show. Yun Shishir was originally mentally prepared, but when she arrived at the scene, the production team said that there was a segment where they would have to wear very heavy sumo wrestling props. Different celebrities would be divided into two groups and compete against each other. When Yun Shishir saw the props, her eyes dimmed even more. It was so heavy. It must be very heavy to wear. Yun Shishir went on stage in a daze. During the recording of the show, when it came to the games segment, she wore the sumo wrestling outfit and appeared on stage. She looked very heavy but also very cute. The celebrities were divided into two groups. Yun Shishir realized that most of the celebrities in her group were thinner and weaker, while the other group's celebrities were more strong. She protested. There's an imbalance in strength. We're all old and weak. It's not fair. Her protest caused the audience to roar with laughter. Hua Jin was in the same group as her. When he heard that, he was dealt a huge blow and protested, "What do you mean old and weak? I protest." Yun Shishir kicked him to the ground. The audience roared with laughter again. Even the MC was amused by Yun Shishir's variety show talent. Then do we need to change the lineup? Hua Jin said, "No need. Our Shishir is our team's carry. With Shishir as our trump card, we'll definitely win." Yun Shishir felt that she had been unjustly implicated. At the start of the game, the host announced on the spot that the celebrity who won the game would donate 5 million yuan to the charity organization in the name of the team. This was a great honor. Yun Shishir originally didn't want to continue fighting, but when she heard that there was such a meaningful reward, her fighting spirit was ignited. In the end, what made everyone not know whether to laugh or cry was that everyone thought that Hua Jin's "Shishir is our trump card" was just a joke. Who would have thought that Shishir's fighting strength was on the verge of exploding? She rampaged all the way, and even a male guest with a more muscular body was pushed out of the circle by her. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this time, only Hua Jin and Yun Shishir were left in the arena. Yun Shishir looked proud and arrogant as she asked, "Who else wants to fight?" The host immediately gave her the title of Desperate 13th Lady. Hua Jin stood up and revealed, "Don't underestimate Shishir. She ate 2 of my meals on set." Ha 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 ha. The guests were convulsing with laughter. Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu were overjoyed as they watched the live broadcast. Ha ha ha. Mommy is so funny. Xiao Yichen said, "Do you have to fight so hard? You don't even have a ladylike image anymore. Mommy isn't ladylike in the first place, okay? If Mommy hears you, she'll beat you up." Chapter 24:59. When Yun Shishir returned home after filming, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen immediately welcomed her. "Madam 13 is home." When Yun Shishir heard this nickname, her eyes twitched and her face darkened. She knew that the 2 little guys must have watched the live broadcast of her show. She said angrily, "Don't give Mommy a nickname." Yu said pitifully, Mommy, I'm innocent. The host gave you this nickname, not Yu. Seeing how pitiful he looked, Yunshishir could not help but pinch his cheeks and ask, Is Daddy home? Yeah. In the study. When Yunshishir walked into the study, she saw Muyaja sitting in front of the computer and staring at the screen intently. She walked over curiously and saw that he was watching the replay of her show with great interest. It happened to play the scene where she was playing a game. She was wearing a cumbersome sumo suit and charging into the enemy camp like a bull. She immediately blushed and blocked the screen. She said gloomily, Stop watching. This is for the show's effect. I'm not that barbaric. Muyaja smiled and grabbed her wrist, pulling her into his arms. Why are you back so late? The show should have finished filming a long time ago. Yeah, I had supper with the crew after filming. What did you eat? Seafood porridge. Yunshishir suddenly thought of something and asked, Have you seen Weibo? Weibo? Muyaja was stunned. He quickly realized what she was talking about and replied, Yeah, I saw it. I saw it. It was very exciting. Yunshishir said pitifully, Don't get the wrong idea. The woman in the photos in the Weibo post this morning is not me. The first thing she did when she got home was to explain things to him. She had left in a hurry in the morning. If she explained, it would seem too deliberate. Although she felt that this incident had nothing to do with her, she also knew that Muyaja could tell at a glance that the woman in the photos was not her. But after all, it involved her and Gu Xingze. When Li Xianer hyped up the news, it would inevitably lead to other media outlets hyping up the scandal between her and Gu Xingze. She was worried that he would overthink when he saw those messy reports in hype. Moreover, she did not want to implicate Gu Xingze again. This man's methods had always been ruthless. If she angered him, she might be banned again. Muyaja grabbed her chin and kissed her fair cheek. He hummed again, but this time, his tone was full of tenderness. I know, you don't have to explain yourself. I'm afraid you'll think too much. She didn't care much about this incident, but she cared more about his feelings. Muyaja said, I'm not as stupid as you think. All right. It's good that you're not thinking too much. Yunshishir heaved a sigh of relief and slumped in his arms. I'm so tired today. Dearest hubby, can you massage my shoulders? Your shoulders are sore. Muyaja was nervous for a moment. Seeing her tired face, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. He immediately lifted his hand and massaged her shoulders obediently. He was quite strong. Yunshishir mumbled, Be gentler. Yeah. He was also afraid that he would hurt her petite body, so he used less strength. Here, okay. And here, a little to the left, yeah. Use a little more strength, it's so sore. Chapter 2460. Yunshishir was able to order a certain man around with ease. His grip was just right and she couldn't help but let out a few soft moans of pleasure. He saw that her intoxicated look was just too moving, too cute, and he couldn't help but lightly peck her cheek. This intimate action was bumped into by the two little lads who had snuck into the study. Yu and Xiao Yichen were the best at catching adulterers. Muyaja's face froze. Yu's eyes widened in surprise. Then, she ran over enviously and complained, Daddy, you're biased. My back was itchy just now, but you didn't even want to scratch it. Xiao Yichen said enviously, Mommy seems to be very comfortable. Daddy, you should massage my shoulders too. Yunshishir's eyes twitched and she said, Mommy is very tired after working for the whole day, okay? Humph. Yu placed her hands on her hips and said self-righteously, Yu has been doing housework for the whole day, so she's very tired too, okay? When Xiao Yichen heard this, he also placed his hands on his hips and said unreasonably, Xiao Yichen has been playing for the whole day, so his shoulders are sore too. Yu and Yun were silent. They glared at him in disdain and said, "You think you're in the right after playing for the whole day." Yu immediately took action. She cupped her fists and cracked her knuckles. "Mui Chen, you still have the cheek to say that. You only know how to play games when I asked you to mop the floor. You want a massage, right? I'll let you have a taste of my fist." As she said this, she grabbed Xiao Yichen's collar. Xiao Yichen was so shocked that he cried out, Yu, you're a bully." Then, he ran out of the study. Yu chased after him. "Mui Chen, you big idiot. Don't run." Yun and Mu Yaja stared dumbfoundedly at the two boys making a ruckus. They stared blankly for a moment before looking at each other and laughing. "They really are two living treasures," Yun said with emotion. With these two clowns at home, there was no need to worry about loneliness. Sometimes, when she came back from work feeling exhausted, these two little lads always had the ability to heal her heart. With just a few words, even if it was just a look, they would always be able to sweep away the haze in her heart. "Do you feel better?" he asked softly. The gentleness in his eyes warmed her heart. Yun nodded and said, "Much better. My shoulders aren't so sore anymore." "Thank you, husband." Mu Yaja gently rested his chin on the side of her shoulder and quietly hugged her. In this quiet moment, he only wanted to quietly hug her and gently kiss her. His attachment to her always showed itself unconsciously. Sometimes, even he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He even found it unbelievable. He originally thought that after getting married, their feelings would be like those of married couples, going from intense to dull. However, this feeling didn't fade at all. Instead, it became even more intense and difficult to suppress. What Yun didn't know was that even though he looked so calm when he married her, his heart was like a blooming firework. His feelings for her filled his chest, and he was deeply in love with her. At that time, there were 4 words that kept repeating in his mind: he was married. He was married. Yes, he had a home. When he returned home, he had a wife and a pair of adorable sons. This was a life that he could only look forward to. This joy still hadn't faded even now. Chapter 2461. At moments in corners where she couldn't see, he would always secretly take out the marriage certificate as if he was possessed and look at it again and again. He would stare at the photo of the two people leaning against each other in a daze. Unknowingly, a smile would always appear in his eyes. If Yun knew that he always carried the marriage certificate with him, she would definitely have a whole new level of respect for this man. Even Lu Jinyu had seen it a few times. In the office, when he was free from work, he would take out the small red book from his pocket and look at it. Lu Jinyu secretly said to Jiang Xin, "Boss seems to be possessed by something." When Jiang Xin found out, he secretly gave Mu Yaja the title of a wife-slave behind his back. Wife-slave. Lu Jinyu shook his head and said, "You didn't see boss smiling foolishly at the marriage certificate. It scared me." Jiang Xin was in a mess. Mu Yaja didn't seem to realize that ever since they got married, he seemed to be becoming more and more of a wife-slave. Yun was originally worried that after they got married, this man would think that since they were already married, he wouldn't cherish her anymore. But what about the opposite? He cherished her more and more. Because he was always thinking about her. She was his wife, his legitimate wife. If he didn't pamper her, who else would pamper her? It was precisely because of this awareness that Mu Yaja displayed the demeanor of a wife-slave that Lu Jinyu and Jiang Xin were taken aback. He also understood that the marriage certificate wasn't just a piece of paper. They were clearly married, but they were still like young men and women in their honeymoon period. Even though they had only parted in the morning and hadn't seen each other for a day, they already missed each other very much. During the afternoon meeting, even though he was sitting in the conference room, he seemed distracted. Hence, he specially returned home early to wait for her return. Where was the husband-gazing stone? However, the husband of the husband-gazing stone was referring to his wife. Now that he was holding her in his arms, when her petite body filled his chest, his heart suddenly calmed down. It was as if this was the only way he could feel the real her and her warmth. Yun Shishir also thought to herself that after they got married, a certain man seemed to be more clingy to her. Was this a good thing? At this moment, Muyaja also had the same thought in his heart. When will my wife give birth to a little princess for me? Hubby, You said, Yun Shishir suddenly said awkwardly, is the plastic surgery technology really so advanced now? Muyaja was still immersed in his fantasies about his little princess, so he only vaguely heard the words, plastic surgery. He asked curiously, plastic surgery? Yes. It was the Weibo post from this morning. The woman in the photo was called Li Xiener. Qin Zhou searched for her photo and she really looked like me. Qin Zhou said that she must have gotten plastic surgery based on me. But can plastic surgery really make you look like me? If the original mold is similar, it's not impossible to make it exactly the same. Upon hearing this, Yun Shishir's expression became even uglier. Her face had been used as a template, and then a woman who looked so much like her had appeared out of nowhere. No matter how she thought about it, she felt uncomfortable and even awkward. The Weibo post from this morning. Chapter 2462. You also think that the woman looks like me, right? Muyaja shook his head and said confidently, how can I mistake my old skin for someone else? I don't think they look alike at all. How is that possible? Yun Shishir obviously did not believe him. Qin Zhou, Yu, and Xiao Chen thought it was me at first glance. I'm the one who shares a bed with you every day. How can I mistake my wife for someone else? Muyaja said, besides, although they look alike, their temperament is obviously different. Temperament? Yes. She doesn't have your temperament. Therefore, even if she has the same looks, she doesn't look outstanding. It was 30% looks and 70% temperament. A person's temperament was more important than their looks. Yun Shishir's temperament was very good. Just like her name, Yun Shishir was poetic, elegant, and elegant. Yun Shishir's heart instantly brightened up when she heard this. She turned around and pinched his cheeks with a smile. You really know how to talk. Regardless of whether he was coaxing her or telling the truth, she was almost dizzy from his words. However, this beautiful mood didn't last for too long. The next day, Li Xiener's management company went all out to create hype. In Qin Zhou's words, it was simply crazy. Good move. What a good move. Qin Zhou slammed a stack of files on the table and said angrily, this Li Xiener is really shameless. What's wrong? Yun Shishir was putting on her makeup when she saw Qin Zhou's angry eyes. She was a little confused. What's wrong with Li Xiener? The management company she signed with signed a publicity team the night before yesterday. This publicity team is really good at creating hype. They actually posted Li Xiener's photos online. Isn't this what you want? Yun Shishir asked curiously, haven't you been looking for photos of her before her plastic surgery? I did find a photo of her before her plastic surgery, but Ease released a press release before Huanyu did. The difference is huge. If I release a statement, I will guide the public opinion in a direction that is beneficial to you. However, the hype team had purposely chosen a few selfies that looked better before her plastic surgery. Then, as soon as they released the article, Li Xiener came out to deny that she had undergone plastic surgery. She even said that she wanted to go to the hospital for a DNA test. Then, she said that she wanted to sue the Weibo media who had slandered her. Their way of praising and trampling on her was really top-notch. Just the topic of plastic surgery alone is enough for Li Xiener to hype up for a while. Isn't she afraid of getting a bad reputation by doing this? So what if he has a bad reputation? Who would care about that little bit of reputation? As long as one was famous, regardless of whether the reputation was good or bad, the more outlandish and shameless one was, the more attention the public would pay. The more attention there was, the more exposure there would be. Li Xian just exposed this hype yesterday, but this morning, there were many satellite channels looking for her to do a show. This is the effect of hype. In the entertainment industry, there were many female celebrities who did not hesitate to make a fool of themselves by deliberately making disgusting comments to gain exposure and fame. There were also many female celebrities who were more direct and became famous overnight. The entertainment industry was in a mess because of these immoral celebrities. After all, fame and wealth were often unscrupulous. Chapter 2463. Qin Zhou said angrily, Sure, you've been bitten by that mad dog, Li Xian, and she won't let you go. Didn't you see her Weibo update this morning? Her selfie is exactly the same as the selfie you posted 2 nights ago. She's obviously imitating you. Yun Shishir immediately opened it to take a look. Sure enough. She had posted a selfie on Weibo 2 nights ago. She was wearing a hat and a creamy yellow outfit, with one hand supporting her chin and a reserved smile on her lips. Li Xian, on the other hand, copied her selfie this morning and posted a selfie. She was wearing the same outfit, and even the background was extremely similar. She did not know how she did it. Yun Shishir was also a little angry. She cursed angrily at the side. This Li Xian is really a bitch. I'm so annoyed just looking at her. She's probably sure that we can't do anything to her. Does this Li Xian have a big sugar daddy backing her? Qin Zhou said unhappily, even if she didn't before, now that this matter has happened and she's famous, there will be a long line of sugar daddies who want her as their mistress. Early in the morning, Yun Shishir's character was ruined by this woman's bad publicity. 2 days later, Yun Shishir's underwater photos were published on the magazine's official Weibo account, and the behind-the-scenes footage was also made into a short video. Yun Shishir immediately saw the post-production blockbuster. The images were exquisite, and the lighting was very good. In the dark blue water, a bright red dress was seductive in the water. There was one photo that she especially liked. She was submerged in the water, and the sunlight shone through the water, reflecting the splendor of the waves. She was wearing a red dress and was facing the water. Her black hair was curled up, and the hem of her dress was charming. On her fair face, her eyebrows were picturesque, her eyes were seductive, her lips were red, and her teeth were white. When she looked back, she was seductive. There was also a shot of the back view. Her figure was enchanting, like a mermaid diving into the depths of the water. She wore a pure white dress and held a bunch of alluring roses in her hands. She lowered her eyes and gently sniffed the roses. She was beautiful and enchanting. After the light and shadow treatment, her white dress was like snow, and her skin was like porcelain. The roses set off her black hair and red lips, and the visual effect was extremely stunning. Very few female celebrities had attempted to do underwater photo shoots. Yun Shishir's underwater photo shoots had stunned countless people. As soon as the photo was released, it attracted the attention of many fans. Oh my god! I didn't know you could take photos like this. Shishir looks really enchanting like this. Just like mermaids. She's so charming. I like the one in the red dress the most. She has black hair and a red dress. She looks so flirtatious underwater. Too beautiful. A few days after the photo shoots were published, Li Xian's Weibo also published a set of photo shoots. However, what surprised people was that she actually imitated Yun Shishir's underwater photo shoots and took a set of photo shoots. What was even more infuriating was that whether it was the composition, the shooting posture, the clothes, the style, or the makeup, they were all exactly the same. The traces of imitation couldn't be more obvious. When put together, it was impossible to tell which set was taken by Yun Shishir and which set was taken by Li Xian-er. Qin Zhou had been paying attention to Li Xian-er's Weibo. When he clicked on this set of photo shoots, he was about to explode with anger. This Li Xian-er was clearly determined to imitate Yun Shishir to the end. Chapter 2464. However, Li Xian'er's photo shoot was not as exquisite as Yun Shishir's. It was a little rough and the lighting effects were not satisfactory. After all, it was not taken by a famous photographer, so the details were not handled well. However, it was more than enough to fool a group of fans. When Yun Shishir's fans saw this, they were filled with righteous indignation and scolded her for being shameless. However, Li Xian'er seemed to enjoy this kind of attention. That morning, when she opened Weibo and saw that the photos that had been secretly taken after she left the hotel that night had been published on the website, she was shocked. Early in the morning, she was summoned to the company. She was trembling with fear. After this incident, she was worried that the company would ask about it. However, to her surprise, the person who summoned her was the company's senior management. The senior management went straight to the point and said that the photos had been secretly taken by the paparazzi that the company had hired. He also told her that the company had the intention to package her, hype her up, and turn her into a professional actress. Li Xian'er was a little stunned by the sudden surprise. Like many young girls who started out as models, she had graduated from an unknown art school. Of course, like those students who started out in the modeling industry, she had worked in public relations during her university years. Of course, she only worked on the stage and never left it. At that time, she was still in school and the discipline was quite strict. She used this job to save some money. After graduating from the art school, she came to the bustling metropolis, Beijing, alone. She planned to work hard towards her dream of acting. Her features were not outstanding. At that time, Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir's movie had not yet been released, but the photos had already been released. She was a die-hard fan of Gu Xingze. Therefore, she copied Yun Shishir's looks and traveled to Korea. There, she underwent a total of 3 operations to look like her. The plastic surgery was very successful. With her outstanding appearance, she quickly signed a contract with a modeling company. Of course, this modeling company was not considered popular and had nothing to do with the catwalk. When she was not famous, she could only shoot some simple print ads and get some meager pay. The turning point of her fate was probably when she met Gu Xingze at that private gathering. At that time, Gu Xingze had just been banned from the entertainment industry. All his acting contracts had been cancelled, and his career had hit rock bottom. When they met, he seemed to be in a bad mood. He had drunk some wine and was in a daze. She deliberately approached him and tried to please him. Perhaps it was because of her appearance, but he didn't seem to reject her approach. Everything that happened next seemed to be logical. He was a normal man and naturally had the most primitive desires of a man. However, there was always a woman in his heart. Because of this woman, he instinctively resisted other women. However, Li Xian'er, who looked like her, appeared at the right time and broke the spell. Perhaps he wanted to find a substitute to comfort himself, but he chose her. However, this relationship had nothing to do with romance or any feelings. At the beginning of this relationship, he coldly and cruelly made it very clear that between them, it was just a transaction. The money and the goods were settled. He needed her, and as the price, he would give her a large sum of money. Chapter 2465. However, he rarely looked for her and rarely touched her. Many times, he stopped abruptly at the crucial moment. His desires in certain areas were very weak. Or perhaps, he would only think of looking for her when he really needed her and couldn't control himself. It was just that each of them wanted what they wanted, that was all. As for women other than Yun Shishir, he was indifferent. He didn't have much hope for women. Perhaps, in the future, he would follow his family's wishes and marry a wife. Or perhaps, he would stay single for the rest of his life. He would only ask for warmth when he needed it. In this aspect, he couldn't be more negative. During that time, he was muddle-headed and lost. As a result, he didn't even notice the hidden dangers around him. The company's higher-ups quickly noticed the relationship between Li Xian and Gu Xingze and were overjoyed. Especially Li Xian's manager. She wasn't really a manager, but she could be considered the person in charge. After a discussion with the company's higher-ups, they came up with a series of hype plans without the knowledge of the two people. What a joke. No one dared to imagine that Li Xian, who looked like an unknown young model, would have a relationship with the superstar, Gu Xingze. No matter what the relationship was, as long as she had a little bit of contact with Gu Xingze, she would have extraordinary hype capital. This kind of hype capital meant unimaginable exposure and popularity. Ever since Ease was established, they had rarely been able to cultivate any truly famous celebrities. After all, it was a third-rate agency. Even if they had Mekong as their backing, Mekong was still a modeling agency that mainly dealt in peaches. Their resources would only be given to the artists under them. Therefore, Ease had never produced any A-list celebrities. Li Xian would probably be the one to break the record. Having a famous artist under them might be a breakthrough. All of this was thanks to Gu Xingze. The company had a showdown with Li Xian and gave her a contract. As long as she signed it, it meant that she had signed a life and death contract with the company. She had to obey the company's arrangements. The higher-ups had clearly told her that they would be arranging a series of publicity campaigns for her. For this reason, the company had spent a huge sum of money to hire a team that specialized in publicity campaigns. They would use her and Gu Xingze to create a series of publicity campaigns. The publicity campaigns required her cooperation. However, in order to gain popularity and exposure, she would be subjected to a lot of curses and insults from her fans. This was something that she had to endure in order to become famous. If she could endure it, the company would put all their eggs in one basket and turn her into a professional celebrity. In the future, she might be able to act in movies, commercials, television shows, and cooperate with many A-list celebrities. If she worked hard enough and endured enough hardship, she could also be on equal footing with real A-list celebrities in the future, such as Yun Shishir and Yang Mi. When Li Xian heard this, she was extremely moved. Her heart was beating very fast, like thunder, and boiling hot. In the entertainment industry, there were different grades and ranks. At the top of the pyramid were A-list international celebrities, such as Han Yuyan and Gu Xingze. A-list and B-list celebrities who were not internationally famous, such as Li Juxian, Yang Mi, Yun Shishir, and C-list celebrities like Lin Ji. Chapter 2466. She didn't have any works or anything. She could only hope to gain the favor of a rich man. To put it bluntly, she was just a high-class prostitute. If she was lucky, she could marry into a rich family and become a rich man's wife with her looks and seduction skills that she had learned in this industry. Such a glamorous dream was something that few could achieve. She had always envied Yun Shishir for being able to become a professional actress and act with Gu Xingze. The company's offer was extremely tempting because the company was also ambitious. They hoped to use her to open up the entertainment industry. If she became famous, they would be able to get some resources through her. Ease lacked these resources too much. Hence, they were very ambitious. However, Li Xian still had some concerns in her heart. She was still a little embarrassed. She said worriedly, "It's not very good to do this, is it? Isn't this equivalent to using Xingze?" Use? A few of the executives laughed. "Silly girl, in this industry, it's all about using each other. You step on me, I step on you. Whoever is more ruthless will get the upper hand. Use? Who isn't using each other? Moreover, aren't you obviously setting up a monument to your chastity? Didn't you get plastic surgery based on Yoon Shusher's face? Aren't you just delusional about using Yoon Shusher's fame to help you overcome obstacles in this industry? Their sharp words were aggressive. Lee Hsien couldn't avoid it. She lowered her head in shame. Moreover, I think that Gu Xingze likes you quite a lot. He treats you so well. This little bit of resources shouldn't be a problem for him. After all, haven't you slept with him? Lee Hsien-er's face turned even redder. Slept with him? It was only 3 times. One of those times was when Gu Xingze was drunk. She was obsessed with seducing him and getting close to him. After that, it seemed like there was no more. His need for her was only to call her over and quietly stay by his side. She deliberately seduced him and even deliberately wore very sexy lingerie. However, he seemed to be indifferent. Sometimes, if she went overboard, he would treat her coldly and not look for her for a long time. She stammered, "He and I actually don't have such a deep relationship." "It's not as ambiguous as you say, silly girl. In this industry, Gu Xingze is famous for his abstinence. Ever since his debut, he's never had a woman by his side. Even if there's a scandal, it's always the woman who's thrown herself at him to create hype. He doesn't care about creating hype and rarely finds a partner in bed. You're probably the first one, right?" What did this mean? This meant that Gu Xingze still had some feelings for her. In other words, you must be special in his heart. It was special. Otherwise, would he have hugged you so brazenly to the hotel? There are so many paparazzi waiting for him. He did this because he didn't have his guard up against you. So, don't you think you're special? When Lee Hsien heard this, her heart beat like thunder. She was even a little bit overjoyed. I'm special. She was special. Was that really the case? All this while, she had always thought that this was just a transaction. Chapter 2467. Besides, do you know how Yoon Shusher debuted? When she first debuted, she wasn't very famous. Gu Xingze gave her his top manager and supported her. He even used his fame and resources to help her get to the top. This shows that he is very generous to the woman he loves. Although you aren't Yoon Shusher, you had a relationship with him before. It's not a big deal for him to give you some resources. Lee Hsien-er signed the contract in a daze, feeling a little uneasy. She was like an evil demon who was at the mercy of the gods and demons. That night, Gu Xingze called and asked directly, "Lee Hsien-er, are you crazy?" Lee Hsien had expected the superstar to call her at this juncture of the hype, but she did not expect him to speak in a foul and furious tone. She could not help but feel uneasy when he called her in a fit of rage. After receiving the long-awaited call, her heart started to beat faster in the face of his questioning tone. She didn't know what to do. While she didn't know what to do, Gu Xingze gave her a stern warning, "Are you trying to use me to get to the top?" Who gave you the right to do that?" Gu Xingze was obviously frustrated. He scolded her sternly, "Before this, I remember making it clear to you that we have nothing to do with money. Other than that, you're not allowed to have any other ideas." Nothing to do with money. Am I a product? Do you think I'm a product? Lee Hsien-er choked with sobs. Especially when she heard the words, "nothing to do with money." Why? Aren't you? Gu Xingze retorted, "I thought you knew your place very well." Xingze. Lee Hsien-er said bitterly, "I didn't want to create hype today. After I left the hotel, I went straight home. I didn't hire the paparazzi. It really isn't. What difference does it make whether it's you or not? Right now, you're the one who's causing me a lot of trouble." Gu Xingze was beginning to realize just how dangerous this woman was. He had nothing to say about using him. It was not worthwhile for him to lower himself to the same level as this small fry. But this Li Xian's way of creating hype was obviously aimed at Yun Shishir and him. His original intention was to not disturb Yun Shishir's life. What she did was too much. He could condone his own depravity, but he couldn't condone other women using his name to hurt that woman. Li Xian'er was on the verge of tears. No matter how stupid she was, she could tell what Gu Xingze was trying to protect with this phone call. He didn't care if his popularity would be affected by this hype, nor did he care how others would view his private life. What he cared about was that her way of creating hype had disturbed Yun Shishir. She didn't understand. In terms of looks, she had done plastic surgery to look like Yun Shishir. When she saw the interview, it seemed like Yun Shishir didn't care about Gu Xingze at all. But she was willing to give up anything for him. Even if it was just a word from him, she was willing to give up on creating hype. But a phone call shattered her infatuation. Chapter 2468. Before this phone call, she had happily thought that she had some special feelings for this man. She had high hopes, but all she got was his anger and questioning. Li Xian'er was completely dumbfounded. The most heartbreaking thing wasn't his questioning, but his protection of Yun Shishir. It was obvious that he valued his own reputation. That Yun Shishir, what right did she have? Why was he so obsessed with her when he knew that he couldn't have her? Li Xian couldn't figure it out. What was the scariest thing for a woman? It wasn't losing to a woman, but losing to a woman who couldn't be bothered to fight with her. This Yun Shishir didn't even care about Gu Xingze. Why was Gu Xingze so devoted to her in the end? Xingze. Actually, I'm not greedy. I didn't mean to use you to create hype. It's just that the company arranged a series of plans for me, so I could only follow them. I signed the contract with them in a daze. The company created hype, so I had to cooperate. Li Xian'er suddenly thought of something. As if possessed, she stared straight at the wall and gripped her phone tightly. Besides, even if it's just creating hype, I don't think I went overboard, did I? Xingze, didn't you help Yun Shishir get to her current position? When she first debuted, she wasn't popular and was still a newcomer. Guan Yu packaged her to create a scandal with you and helped her get to her current position. Then it shouldn't matter if you give me some resources, right? I'm not greedy. As long as you give me a little of Yun Shishir's resources, just a small portion, it'll be enough. I'm not greedy. I just want to be a professional actress. Gu Xingze was silent for a long time. When he opened his mouth again, his voice was even colder. Li Xian'er, I advise you not to try to guess my intentions or negotiate with me. Remember this. You should know the limits of our relationship. I'm never stingy with what I owe you. However, don't covet what doesn't belong to you in the first place. Yun Shishir, this woman is not someone you can scheme against, let alone offend. The reason why she was able to become famous was definitely not because she had good resources. She had the ability to do so. I've already made my stance very clear. If you stop now, I'll let bygones be bygones. But if you still refuse to realize your error. Gu Xingze suddenly changed the topic and said coldly, even if you are praised to the top, I will still beat you down to the bottom. You and I are already done. Let's part on good terms. Don't make things too ugly. I'm officially informing you now that from now on, we have nothing to do with each other. Also, if you still don't respect yourself, I don't mind using my methods. With that, Gu Xingze hung up the phone. Li Xian'er held the phone and stared blankly at the bare wall. She loosened her grip and the phone fell to the ground with a loud thud. After hearing Gu Xingze's words, she almost broke down. His expectations and the little bit of joy he had in his heart had all been swept away. It turned out that she wasn't special in his heart. She thought that she was special, but she was just a substitute in his eyes. Chapter 2469. Li Xian was so angry that she wanted to go crazy. She stood in the room and wanted to throw everything she could see on the ground as if that was the only way to appease her anger. Stop. How could that be? If he had such an attitude, then there was no harm in her smashing a pot that had nothing to lose. Anyway, she had already signed the contract. If she were to break the contract, the penalty for breaching the contract would be immeasurable. Since he had already said those harsh words, her heart was completely dead. Therefore, she was not afraid at all. If he wanted to attack her, then she might as well let him. Even if she knew that the consequences of being stubborn would be tragic. She no longer cared about anything. Who asked her to be filled with resentment and anger at this moment? Yun Shishir felt like she was being pestered by a disgusting woman. Ever since that day, Ease had boldly and decisively launched their hype campaign. There seemed to be no signs of stopping. In fact, the situation was getting more and more intense, and there seemed to be a lot of hype going on. Li Xian's Weibo updates gradually became more frequent. No matter what she posted, the following selfies always showed signs of imitating Yun Shishir. She deliberately trimmed her hairstyle and used the same color as Yun Shishir's lipstick in the latest photo shoot. She also took a selfie with the same brand of mascara in the print beauty advertisement that Yun Shishir endorsed. The worst was when Yun Shishir and Gu Xing's new drama started filming. The media followed and reported on it, and there were constant reports from the set. Yun Shishir's exclusive car in the production team was a Volkswagen Golf GTI. Not long after, Li Xian posted a selfie of herself leaning against the Volkswagen Golf GTI. It was obvious that she was trying to ride on Yun Shishir's popularity. Yun Shishir thought that Li Xian's hype campaign would not last long. However, she did not expect Li Xian to be so persistent in this matter. It seemed like she was going to continue imitating her until the end. Rather than calling it an imitation, it was more like role-playing, right? Yun Shishir sat in the makeup room and quietly scrolled through Li Xian's Weibo. Suddenly, she lamented, "I've never seen such a shameless woman." Hua Jin raised his eyebrows and said, "I've seen a lot of them." In this circle, the more women like Li Xiang were able to grasp an opportunity, the more they would be undaunted by setbacks. A woman like this was very ambitious. No matter how badly she was slandered, no matter how much she was bombarded, it was useless. Even if she was shameless, she had to become famous. To an artist, exposure was as important as life. After all, her youth is limited. Yun Shishir put down her phone and quietly washed her nail polish with nail polish remover. Her gaze was a little absent-minded. Qin Zhou was also frowning. He did not have any constructive measures. Ji Lin said that Li Xian and Ease were like two lazy dogs. They were shameless and unafraid of boiling water. Even if they were competing in terms of publicity, Ease was simply crazy when it came to hyping things up. Even Qin Zhou had to admit defeat. It was obvious that they wanted to use the company's resources to promote Li Xian to the top. If they did not achieve their goal, they would not give up. Chapter 2470. The crew had already started filming. The original novel was called Extreme Youth, and the name of the TV series was also tentatively set. After half a month of training, Yun Shishir immediately started filming. At the same time, the post-production of Lethal Beauty was initially completed. It was officially broadcast on a first-tier satellite TV channel. The TV rights of Lethal Beauty were exclusively bought by Beijing Central Satellite TV. Yun Shishir's heart was beating fast. She played a vicious female supporting role in Lethal Beauty. In the series, in order to get the male lead played by Hua Jin, she was unscrupulous, ruthless, and scheming against the female lead. A standard femme fatale with a ruthless heart. Therefore, when Lethal Beauty was officially broadcast, she was also frightened. After the first 3 episodes, she dared not open her Weibo to look at the fans' comments, let alone the fans' comments on the forum. They would definitely be vicious comments. In the first 3 episodes, she played a female supporting role in the series, Qin Yuyan, which attracted a lot of hatred. Before Qin Chang'el's rebirth, Qin Yuyan seduced the male lead and married into the royal family. She fed Qin Chang'el sterilization drugs, and she was pregnant with the royal heir and gave birth to a prince for the male lead. Immediately after, she was conferred the title of empress because of her son. Using the royal heir and the male lead's favor, she was ruthless and ruthless. She schemed everywhere and forced Qin Chang'el into the cold palace. She gouged out her eyes and broke her bones. Finally, she tampered with the imperial edict and gave her a 3-foot white silk, forcing Qin Chang'el to commit suicide. Yun Shishir initially chose to play this role because compared to Qin Chang'el, Qin Yuyan's character image was more vivid. Qin Chang'el's character design was too monotonous. The core of the script was the word revenge. Her rebirth was dedicated to revenge. But Qin Yuyan was different. She was also a naive girl who loved someone wholeheartedly. Later, her family fell and was bullied. She used all means and schemes to seize power. Step by step, she became the empress. If Qin Chang'el hadn't been reborn and had the memory of her previous life, even Qin Chang'el might not be Qin Yuyan's opponent. Yun Shishir felt that this role was too cool. How could he think of so many tricks? Especially the part about tampering with the imperial edict, it was too amazing. Qin Yuyan ordered her confidant to tamper with the imperial edict and bestow Qin Chang'el with a 3-foot white silk. This scene was the climax of the whole drama. However, now that the TV series had been broadcasted, she was a little scared. Although Qin Yuyan's character design was perfect, she was too evil and vicious. Such a character design was challenging, but in front of the audience, it was not likable at all. Perhaps, the popularity she had accumulated on The Green Apple would be lost in Lethal Beauty. Perhaps, overnight, she would become the public enemy of the whole nation. She summoned up her courage and secretly opened Weibo. Sure enough, the keywords #Qin Yuyan and # appeared on the hot search list. Chapter 2471. Lin Ji and Yun Shishir's acting skills are excellent, but with all due respect, I haven't seen such a vicious female supporting character in a long time. Although I'm not a die-hard fan of Yun Shishir, and I know it's the setting of the script, but now I feel sick when I see Yun Shishir's face. For example, damn it. Qin Yuyan, get out of here. I think this vicious woman deserves to die 10,000 times. I want to chop Qin Yuyan with a knife. Ha 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 ha. A woman who can take the role of Qin Yuyan must be very scheming, right? Yun Shishir doesn't look like a good person, she's obviously a bitch. How can Qin Yuyan be so vicious? She's too shrewd, isn't she? When she gave the white silk, Qin Yuyan's expression was so scary. I shuddered and was scared by her eyes. Yun Shishir cried on the dressing table. Don't you have any pertinent comments? For example, good acting, great acting skills, or something like that. It was over. Was the popularity and reputation that she had worked so hard to accumulate going to be ruined because of the role of Qin Yuyan? Although it was a thankless role, she had already known that the audience would hate her so much that they wanted her to die as soon as possible. Some of the audience even attacked her personally, cursing her to be hit by a car when she went out. It was so heart-wrenching. As she expected, after the broadcast, her Weibo was soon attacked. But on the other hand, she was a little complacent. She thought that the reason why the audience hated this character so much must be her superb acting skills. She had portrayed Qin Yuyan's viciousness so well. In order to study this character, she had spent a lot of effort. From the eyes, to the expression, to the behavior, she had figured it out several times. Qin Yuyan's character had the biggest change in the script. From the initial naivety of a young girl to the later insidious ruthlessness, she played the male and female protagonists with ease. Qin Zhou had told her before that no matter what the audience said about Qin Yuyan, she must post a Weibo status to attract attention after the TV series was broadcast. Yun Shishir posted a Weibo status. She sat in the driver's seat of a modified Golf GTI, took a picture of her hands on the steering wheel, and then posted, "Today, it's not Qin Yuyan, but the racer Han Zhen." Then, he would submit a rather cool selfie and publish it. After posting the Weibo, she threw the phone aside, started the car, and went for a ride on the mountain road near the filming site. Today, she was going to shoot a set of racing scenes. Some of the stunts were naturally done by professional racers. She only needed to reshoot some scenes. In fact, after such a long period of training, he had already learned some basic techniques, such as the basic tail swing and simple drifts. However, since they were filming on the mountain path today, in order to ensure safety, they still had to hire professionals to film those cool scenes. But what made people speechless, Gu Xingze did not do anything at all. Body. Acting. Driver. The whole process of showing off his superb driving skills was done by him alone. Mu Shi seemed to have mentioned before that Gu Xingze also raced in private. He was the artist who owned the most racing cars. Moreover, in this Extreme Youth movie, the male lead's racing cars were all privately owned by him. Chapter 2472. Mu Shi said that Gu Xingze had participated in many international competitions and even won first place in the Ferrari competition 3 years ago. When he was 20 years old, he competed with Schumacher. He was a terrifying man. It was as if this drama was tailor-made for him. After a day of filming, when she returned home, Yu saw her and complained, "Empress Yu, why are you home so early today?" Empress Yu is Qin Yuyan's title in the drama. Yun Shishir's lips twitched when Xiao Yichen ran up to her. After sizing her up for a while, he said with lingering fear, "Mommy, if Xiao Yichen is disobedient in the future, will you give Xiao Yichen 3 feet of white silk?" Pfft. Yun Shishir clutched her chest, feeling hurt internally. "Did you guys watch the premiere?" Yu and Xiao Yichen nodded silently. "I'm so sad. I didn't expect Mommy to be so vicious. I watched the premiere yesterday and was so angry at Mommy." Xiao Yichen complained tearfully, "Sister Changle is so pitiful. She loved Xianyuan Chase so much, but what happened in the end? Even if she dies, she will die in the cold palace. Mommy is so mean. She tampered with the imperial edict and gave her 3 feet of white silk. She's so mean." Yu glanced at him and saw that Xiao Yichen seemed to be too engrossed in the drama as he said sadly, "Originally, Xianyuan Che's imperial edict was to let Qin Changle out of the cold palace, but Qin Yuyan interfered and caused them to be separated forever. Poisonous." Yun Shishir retorted, "Xiao Yichen, are you poisonous? Look carefully, the person standing in front of you is your most adorable and beautiful mother. Why did you put yourself in the role of Qin Yuyan?" Sigh, "It's because this drama made me feel so depressed." Yun Shishir thought in annoyance, this rascal is actually speaking up for Qin Changle. Qin Changle was played by Lin Ji. Although Qin Changle was the female lead, Yun Shishir didn't like her character because of Lin Ji. After all, first impressions were the strongest. When she thought about how Xiao Yichen actually liked Qin Changle's character, Yun Shishir was so angry that she suffered internal injuries. Yun Shishir placed her bag on the sofa and walked into the dining room to pour herself some water. Xiao Yichen immediately followed behind her. He knew that he had offended her with his words, so he smiled in a flattering manner. "Mommy, are you thirsty?" "Aha! Come, sit down and don't move." Xiao Yichen led her to the dining table and sat down. Then, he smiled and said, "Mommy, I'll get you some water." Then, he eagerly went to get the purified water to drink. Yun Shishir's anger dissipated a little. That's more like it. Xiao Yichen eagerly brought the purified water over and even told her to drink slowly. Yun Shishir picked up the glass and took a sip with satisfaction. Suddenly, she saw Xiao Yichen blinking his beautiful big eyes. He looked at her curiously and passionately. Smiling, he asked, "Mommy, when will your character, Qin Yuyan, end?" Cough, cough, Yun Shishir choked violently and coughed repeatedly. Yu saw this and quickly went over to pat her back gently. He glared at Xiao Yichen and snorted coldly. "Mu Yichen, are you deliberately trying to make mommy angry?" "Because I really hate Qin Yuyan." Xiao Yichen pursed his lips and said. Chapter 2473. Yun Shishir was touched and said, You are really mommy's best friend." Yu nodded and said, "Mommy, don't worry. Even if I go to hell, I will be with you." Yun Shishir was silent and her eyes twitched. "Is it that tragic?" "Yes. Mommy, your Weibo is exploding." "Exploding? Your fans are exploding your Weibo." Xiao Yichen sat down at the table and said, "The sister who played Qin Chang'e must be very proud now. It seems that all the audience hates Qin Yuyan. This character is so unlikable. Mommy, why did you give up the role of the female lead and play this vicious woman?" "Because Qin Yuyan has a very moving character." When Yun Shishir first read the script, she also felt that Qin Yuyan was too horrible. However, later on, she found that Qin Yuyan was not purely a bad person. Compared to Qin Chang'e's viciousness, Qin Yuyan's so-called viciousness was just a way to protect herself. The author of the original novel communicated with her and was surprised to know that she would play Qin Yuyan. The author said, "Although I am the author of the original novel, I have no say in the choice of actors. However, I was still surprised to know that you would play the role. Although Qin Yuyan is a vicious character, if you look carefully, you will find that she has sincerity and kindness that even Qin Chang'e doesn't have. However, this kindness was killed in the end. Qin Yuyan had to fight for it. Although she is selfish, she is very realistic. If you play it well enough, I believe that this role will be a milestone in your career." Sure, an actress's acting skills can conquer any audience. Even if the character was vicious, if she could conquer the audience with her acting skills, it would be a great achievement. That was why she insisted on playing the role of Qin Yuyan. After the TV series was broadcast, it became the #1 movie. The total number of online views reached 100 million and the average number of subscriptions was 30 million. Overnight, the TV series Lethal Beauty added millions of members to the video websites. At the same time, Lin Ji, who played Qin Chang'e, continued to have more and more fans on Weibo. Meanwhile, Yun Shishir lost more than 10,000 fans overnight. Although it wasn't a lot, the phenomenon of fans dropping was continuous. On the other side, Lin Ji was grinning from ear to ear. With the role of Qin Chang'e, Lin Ji seemed to have returned to her former glory. Variety shows, commercials, endorsements, interviews, and so on, she had a full schedule. Because of this role, all the audience seemed to have lost their memories. They had forgotten all about the series of bad and despicable deeds she had done at the film festival. Therefore, in a place like the entertainment industry, no matter how dark your past was, as long as your public relations were in place, there would always be a day when you could clear your name. Lin Ji's popularity, which had been dormant for a long time, seemed to have recovered overnight. Her dazzling performance in the TV series had won her a lot of popularity. Many fans were so immersed in the show that they went to her Weibo to cheer her on. It turned out that a character could also whitewash a person. Yun Shishir finally realized this. Chapter 2474. On Weibo, the criticism of Qin Yuyan was in full swing, but no one cared about Yun Shishir's superb acting skills. Everyone was immersed in Qin Yuyan's vicious shrewdness and completely ignored the fact that, in terms of acting skills, Yun Shishir absolutely crushed Lin Ji. Lin Ji's acting skills were only commendable, but her acting skills overshadowed any other character in the film. Mu Shi said, "The TV festival is coming soon. Sure, I'm really looking forward to it. With this villain role of Qin Yuyan, you'll definitely win the Best Supporting Actress award. The TV festival is just like the film festival. There are many shady deals, so you can't take everything for granted, lest you return disappointed in the end." Yun Shishir rubbed her forehead and said irritably, "The things that have been troubling me recently are true. Honestly speaking, Mu Shi, I like acting and enjoy the sense of accomplishment of using my acting skills to conquer the audience. However, the entertainment industry gives me a feeling that it's more of a foul atmosphere. For example, Lin Ji, Yan Bingqing, and Li Xian are. In Lethal Beauty, every woman in the harem is fighting, but I feel that in real life, the entertainment industry is like a huge harem. The audience is like an emperor with great power, but sometimes, they're like muddle-headed monarchs who are blinded by their rationality. As for these women in the entertainment industry, they live in a world of open strife and veiled strife every day. They only see the newcomers smiling and not the old ones crying. Everyone is like Qin Yuyan, scheming and using all means to climb up the ladder." Mu Shi frowned and suddenly sat down beside her, gently covering the back of her hand. Sure, I know that you've worked very hard. I've seen it all, but you don't have to tire yourself out. I'm sorry, I must have complained too much and given you a lot of psychological pressure. In the future, no matter how big the injustice is, I won't give you any more trouble. You're not the one giving me trouble, so why are you blaming yourself? But I seem to have transmitted a lot of negative energy to you. Idiot, that's enough. I'm just complaining." Oh, right, the door behind him was suddenly pushed open. Exhausted, Gu Xingze pushed open the door and walked into the dressing room. Just then, he heard Yun Shishir ask Mu Shi with a smile, "Can you help me apply for leave from Qin Zhou tomorrow? I've already applied for leave from the production team, so I won't be able to film for the next 5 days." "What's the matter that requires you to take so many days off?" she asked curiously. Yun Shishir smiled sweetly and blushed. Then, she smiled and said, "I'm going to take my wedding photos." Gu Xingze stood at the door, petrified as if he had been struck by lightning. Just as Mu Shi was about to say something, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure at the door. She could not help but turn her head. When she saw Gu Xingze, she got a shock and exclaimed in shock, "Xingze, you're here." Hearing this, Yun Shishir furrowed her brows. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned to look at the door, only to see Gu Xingze leaning against it. His deep-set eyes were buried in his fringe, so she could not see his face clearly. She had actually forgotten that they had 2 scenes together today. She tugged at her lips and greeted him awkwardly, "Xingze." What followed next was a stiff and cold atmosphere, and she did not know how to break the deadlock. Chapter 2475. I'm not avoiding you. Gu Xingze's lips curled into a smile when he heard this. He took a few steps toward her and stopped in front of her desk. "Then, why did you ask the production team to stagger our filming schedules?" Yun Shishir's face stiffened as she froze in shock. The reason why she and Gu Xingze had never bumped into each other after being in the production team for so long was indeed that she had specially instructed the production team to stagger their filming schedules if they did not have any scenes with each other. Sometimes, when Gu Xingze was done filming and left the set, she would arrive at the same time. When she was done filming and left the set, Gu Xingze would arrive at the set. The 2 of them just happened to stagger in time. There was no choice today as they had 2 scenes with each other. Since the start of filming, she seemed to have been raising her conditions. The production team fulfilled them one by one, making her feel ashamed. Hence, she naturally could not be too willful. Is it because of Li Xian, or? Gu Xingzi suddenly probed nervously, are you angry because of this matter? Yun Shishir did not respond. Beside her, Mu Shi suddenly said indignantly, hey, don't talk about Li Xian anymore. She's been creating a lot of hype recently, and the studio is full of complaints because of this. Sir Xingzi, Qin Zhou said that you have the means to deal with it, so why haven't you dealt with that woman after so long? Gu Xingzi glanced at her coldly. Mu Shi immediately realized that her tone seemed to be overboard. She lowered her head and did not dare to speak again. Yun Shishir, however, had a perfect smile on her face as she raised a brow disapprovingly. Why should I be angry? Gu Xingzi was stunned. Although Li Xian has gone overboard, her ultimate goal is to ride on my popularity and become famous. Since that's the case, I'll just do as she wishes. Anyway, I don't care about this. I entered this industry purely because I like acting. I won't feel reluctant to leave when I'm tired of it. Whether it's popularity or fame, there's no need to force things. There's no need to put the cart before the horse. Sure, actually, I feel that the hype of that incident is a bit inexplicable. Everyone had their own private life, and others had no right to interfere. You're the most pitiful one. You're being used by Li Xian, to increase your popularity, and the media is using you to increase your clicks. Xingzi, if you want to talk about how you feel, I feel indignant for you. That's all. Gu Xingzi's face stiffened. He frowned but did not say anything. Yun Shishir suddenly laughed at herself. What's there for me to be angry about? Do you think I'll be angry because you've ruined yourself over and over again? Mu Shi was stunned. Her words were a little too harsh. Gu Xingzi was also surprised. Xingzi, Yun Shishir said hesitantly, you're actually very outstanding. If you feel tired, you can quit the entertainment industry and choose to live in seclusion. Leave this foul place and live freely. This place is not suitable for you. If I leave this place, where else can I go? Gu Xingzi suddenly retorted. He had no home to return to. He entered the entertainment industry at a young age. It had been 11 years since then, and he had created countless glory. Whether it was popularity, acting skills, or even singing, he had achieved the pinnacle of success that everyone looked up to but could not reach. Chapter 2476. However, the leisurely days left him at a loss for what to do. Perhaps, his life was destined to be cold and cheerless from the moment he was born. He would open his eyes coldly, cry coldly, and laugh coldly. One day in the future, he would leave this world coldly and quietly. He had always been alone in this world. For as long as he could remember, no one seemed to have entered his heart. He had closed himself off time and time again, but there was once a ray of sunlight shining into his world. However, such bright and beautiful warmth did not belong to him. He was a stubborn man to the end. Once he set his mind on something or someone, he would not change his mind no matter what. Until the end of his life. Gu Xingzi suddenly curled his lips and said, you don't have to ask about it, but I want you to know that I'm not a scourge. You don't have to avoid me. Also, I heard that you're holding a wedding soon. I'd like to congratulate you in advance and wish you happiness. Also, you don't have to worry that I won't forget you. I have my pride and self-esteem. Once you've made up your mind, I won't turn back. Therefore, you don't have to worry about me pestering you. In fact, I've never done anything to trouble you. After a pause, he sucked in a breath of cold air and said calmly, sure, I've already let go long ago and let go of my so-called obsession. I'm not the kind of man who pesters you and won't give up even if he can't have you. If you find Li Xian's matter troubling, I'll deal with it properly. I'm deeply sorry for the trouble I've caused you because of my personal reasons. His distant and cold words were extremely resolute. He forced himself to say those words calmly and decisively. He pretended to be calm in order to make her believe that he had let go of all his obsessions. After Gu Xingzi said this, he slowly turned around and left without looking back. Mu Shi watched him leave in a daze. When she turned around, she saw Yun Shishir with her head lowered and an expressionless face. Rather than saying that he was expressionless, it would be better to say that he was trying hard to suppress some kind of emotion. His tightly clenched fists suddenly loosened. Mu Shi thought to herself that, in her eyes, Shishir and Xingzi were actually a match made in heaven. If Shishir could be with Xingzi, she would probably be very happy, right? Gu Xingzi was really affectionate. Sometimes, when you loved someone deeply but couldn't get them, you had to force yourself to restrain your obsession. It must be very painful. She knew that very well. Mu Shi once thought that it would be great if Shishir could be with Xingzi. However, she wasn't someone who would randomly match a couple. It could be seen that Shishir was very happy now. Her heart belonged to someone, so she could only give her blessings. It was just that fate was a strange thing. She wanted to ask Shishir if she had met Gu Xingzi at the beginning of her destiny, would she have chosen him without hesitation? Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Yun Shishir adjusted her emotions. After she was done with her makeup, she rushed to the set and started filming. However, she seemed to be in a bad state and was a little absent-minded. Compared to Gu Xingzi's engrossed acting state, her eyes were unfocused and her expression empty. The director was not satisfied with a few takes. It was not until the 5th take that he walked up to her and asked, "Shishir, are you not in the right state today?" "Yes. I'm not feeling well." Chapter 2477. Gu Xingzi suddenly said, "We'll shoot a long shot today. When she's in a better state, we'll do a close-up." "That works too." The director asked deliberately, "Shishir, you'll be fine with her back view, right? Hang in there for a while more and go home early to rest after you're done." "Okay." The rest of the shoot went exceptionally smoothly. After Gu Xingzi's scenes were over, he left first. Yun Shishir stayed behind to shoot her scene with Hua Jin. By the time it was over, it was already 7 in the evening. When they left the set, Hua Jin nagged that he wanted to hitch a ride in Yun Shishir's nanny van. The reason was simple. "My car broke down this morning and was towed to the garage." Yun Shishir was surprised. "Your car broke down?" "Yeah. I just bought a second-hand Mercedes-Benz that costs more than 300,000. But I think it was scammed by a scammer. It's in terrible condition and keeps breaking down." "Second-hand?" Yun Shishir asked suspiciously. "I remember that you have your own nanny van and private car. Didn't you drive a GTR before?" Hua Jin turned his face away and pretended to be oblivious. "I don't care. I want to hitch a ride in your nanny van. I haven't experienced such a luxurious nanny van before." Yun Shishir complained quietly, "Hua Jin, you seem to be down and out recently." As soon as she said that, Hua Jin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Yun Shishir turned around in surprise and saw him standing there with a faint smile on his face. She asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Hua Jin said innocently, "How do I look down and out? Compared to when you were on the set of Lethal Beauty, you drove a flashy sports car, had 7 or 8 assistants and managers, and were surrounded by a huge entourage. But you seem to be more low-key recently. You don't drive a GTR, but a second-hand car." "Because I can't afford a new car. I can't afford a new Mercedes-Benz." "Why?" Yun Shishir asked curiously, "Where's your GTR?" "I returned it to her." "Ah." Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment and did not react for a moment. Hua Jin looked up and smiled. "I've cut ties with her." Yun Shishir stared at him blankly. It took her a few seconds to realize who Hua Jin was referring to. She couldn't help but look surprised and relieved. "You've severed ties with her?" Yes. Hua Jin slowly caught up with her and looked up at the sky. After I cut ties with her, I returned the car, branded jewelry, apartment, and credit cards that she bought for me. In order to compensate her, I transferred all the assets under my name to her. Of course, there are still some leftovers. What's the change? Less than $1 million. Yun Shishir was speechless for a moment. That's just a small fraction. I didn't expect you to be a tycoon. You think? Hua Jin said proudly, since my debut, I've earned about 200 to 300 million from my remuneration, endorsements, and some investments. Yun Shishir was taken aback. Oh, my God. That's a lot. Yeah, my photo album last year sold a few million copies in Asia. That much?